Anyway, that's the key thing to know. Okay, now, any other questions or thoughts, comments on that before we go to the next piece? Well, the next thing, so what we do then is we then want to summarize what they've said. So what you're looking for then in the home is the whatever, okay? So we summarize that, we land on that summary. Then from there, I gave to you guys the script of the did you let me tell you how I so the next Good, perfect. Thank you for asking. Good. So because that is we start to have some things that become not so important, but other things that are really important. But keep in mind that what they're looking for is 2 or 3 benefits that have to be met. So there's 2 or 3 benefits or needs that have to be met. So what's going to happen then if they are different? So here's what I found usually happens, and I would agree with what Wendy says in terms of the a lot of times you've got kind of one that's the decision maker and things. But I've also found though that there are times when you take it out and she loves it, and he's just like, yeah, I just don't know. I don't know. I just don't want to do it. And when what's going on when that happens is his 2 or 3 are not being met. And so to answer your question, what you've got to do, and the nice thing about this process is you discover it by going through the process, so that you can then say in the meeting, you could say, okay, so how are we going to do this? So because here's what you want to do. We haven't talked about this yet. I want to fill out the grid for him or her first, either one. And usually I will go with whoever seems to be the most talkative. Is I'm going to have them fill out the grid first. So I may say to her or him, whichever, describe for me your ideal home. They'll go through, okay, what else? Keep going, tell me more. Okay, now, then I turn to the other, describe for me your ideal home. Another piece of paper, I'm going to write down all of things. Okay, so now back to her. Of everything we've talked about, what are the 2 or 3 that are most important? Turn to him. Of everything we've talked about, what are the 2 or 3 that are most important? Great. Well, let's talk about your first one first. So picture yourself in the kitchen. Tell me what you see. She starts picturing it. She sees. Okay. Now, we'll do your number 2, 3, whatever. Do that thing. Okay. So now, in the event that there's dissonance there, which may or may not be, but if there is, then I'm going to say, okay, how are we going to solve it? But what I will say though is typically they just have to fine tune a couple of things here or there. The bigger thing is, and remember, I'm going to keep saying this, what's the purpose of us doing this? Crystallization. Okay, good. You guys are getting it. It's to cause crystallization.
Is it possible to meet both the benefits?
Absolutely.
So if the guy wants a good, nice yard, she wants a kitchen, it's like, great. Right?
Yeah.
You can Venn diagram it.
Yeah, no, but here, let me say it this way. Remember I told you guys I wanted a 2-story on an acre?
Yeah.
My wife still wants an acre,
Okay.
but, and initially buying this house, we both wanted an acre. But so the point being though, is what you have to do is figure out why they want it. Because again, it's not the fee, I wanna make sure you guys hear this. It is not the feature they're buying, it's the benefit. So all you have to do is figure out a way to meet the benefit, not the feature. If you can figure out the benefit and meeting the benefit with a different. Hey, I didn't need 1 acre because I don't want to take care of it, but having a 1/4 acre works great for me. Now, so I mentioned to you that my wife still wants to have an acre. And I told her, so here's how we would meet this to make it work, is what I had to tell my wife is, I don't want to spend all the time out there. For me, I want to have my free time to go do fun stuff. Like I want to go recreate, okay? So how could I have an acre but still have time to go recreate? That's it.
Hire,
And so,
oh, excuse me, to do maintenance. okay.
Yeah. so
Yard and goats.
And goats, yeah,
goats.
and chickens.
Yeah, so what I told my wife recently, we were having this conversation, and I said, here's the thing, if you want to still get an acre, we can get an acre, but we have to have an agreement that we're paying somebody to come in and do the yard. She likes working in the yard, so I said, you know, whatever you want to do in the yard, fine, but outside of that, we're gonna pay somebody to come in and do it then, because I don't want to do it. I'll take an acre if I don't have to do all the work that goes with it. I'm okay with that. So that's what I'm saying by the, when you have where they've got these 2 different things, you just still have to remember, he's got 2 or 3 benefits, she does. It's the benefits we gotta meet, not the feature. Now, the feature does provide the benefit. I wanna make sure I'm clear on that. Like, it's not like I'm saying that you could take somebody and put them into something totally different and that they would be okay and happy.
Right.
That's not necessarily what we're talking. But
They want
you
chickens.
can meet the, well, so let me give you the other on permission. The other of my 2 or 3 was the pool in the
Nice to
basement.
meet you.
Well, the reason I wanted a pool was because at that time, I was driving from my house to Gold's Gym, which was about a 3-mile drive. Hi,
I'm sorry, this is Karen.
Karen, good to have you here. No, you're good. Would you ask Lily if she could do a blank, 2 by 1 for Wendy and 1 for
Hi, yes, absolutely, 2.
Karen?
You got it.
Thank you. So I would drive the 3 miles to go
Cold gym.
to Gold's Gym to go swim. And so what was driving this whole idea for me I wanted to have a pool at my house.
Okay.
And the reason I say in the basement is because again, in Utah, you're not gonna use a pool in the winter, like it's too cold and freezing, all that kind of stuff. So for me, I wanted a pool in the basement. Well, the home I bought, we already talked about, doesn't have a pool in the basement, but it has one right outside of my backyard that I could go use. But even that still is not in the winter, but it's not the pool that I wanted. What I wanted, we don't have the benefit word written up here, but it's convenience. What I was looking for was convenience, is because again, in the winter, I would leave my house, I'd go out and get in a cold vehicle, drive to Gold's Gym, get in the pool, swim, get out of the pool, go walk outside, my hair's wet, I'm freezing cold, drive in the cold car back to my house, and I was like, it would just be so convenient to have that. Well, yeah, I have the pool. Guess how many times in 20 plus years that I've gone over and
7.
sweat?
20 times.
I don't even think I've done it 7, probably more like 5, but
Like my blender.
yeah, it's like your blender, exactly. So, but it's the convenience of it. Now, the other thing is, which, and this is why earlier when I said you run 10 miles a day, I run 10 miles a week, is the trail around my neighborhood, there's a walking trail. It's 2 miles long to go from start to finish. And so that's why I pretty much, you don't know how many times I've been like, oh, I wish it was 3 miles, because then I would run 3 miles. Not that I couldn't go do that. I do occasionally do 2 laps.
Out of curiosity, is your home like an HOA? I mean, are you in a
Yes.
stuff? So in other words, you have all sorts of amenities.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yep, exactly. But that's what I was looking for is the convenience, not a pool.
Gotcha.
So that's the whole idea. That's why, remember I said these features have a price tag, the benefits don't. Well, that's why, is because you can meet the benefit in any price range. But you can also figure out other features. I use the example of somebody saying that they want to have, well, let me use me for example. Well, again, when we were kind of role playing some of this stuff with you guys, and I said I was having you read me your questions, and I was saying to you that I wanted to have 4 bedrooms, 4 baths, 4-car garage. The reason I want a 4-car garage is I currently have a 3-car garage, but you can't fit 3 cars in. Yeah, because I have too much other stuff.
Oh,
So I would be saying I want a 4-car garage. If somebody got stuck on I want a 4-car garage, it's not about a 4-car garage. If somebody then said, well, what if you just had a shed? And I'd be like, oh, well, that'd be great, because then I could put the lawnmower, the snow blower, all the other stuff that takes up this other space where a car could go. Now I got a space for a 3-car garage.
What about a detached garage? What about a shed? Nope.
Would you ask it that way though?
Yeah, and so
Would you ask it as a question?
yeah, close to how she would do it.
Okay.
The only thing I would add to what she said is, what would your feelings be, or what would your attitude be? Would this work, or
For a storage facility or a shed?
yeah,
or
what would
something?
your thoughts be about? That's how I would say it is. Instead of like saying, well, couldn't you get a shed or something?
Okay.
I would say, what would your thoughts be about it? Because they might say, no, and it sounds like you did, no.
Okay.
And that's okay then. Now we know though. But at least we know, nope, that's not gonna work.
Has to be a garage.
Okay, cool, good, thanks for asking that question.
You're
Any
welcome.
others?
Yeah.
Karen's like, I don't even know what you're talking about, so. We're wrapping up what we did yesterday, so then we'll jump into this. We'll bring these in. All right, so once I have taken them through all of this, we've now summarized, I've landed on their 2 or their 3 benefits. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask them, how do you plan to pay for it? So that's kind of the next question is, hey, I've got a great picture. I know what you're looking for in a home. How do you plan to pay for it? Their answer is gonna be one of 2 things. What is it?
Sell my home? I'm selling my home?
Private cash
Cash
or
Well,
finance?
or finance.
That's it.
Yeah, now they might get the cash from
So
selling.
that's what I'm
their
saying,
house,
because usually I hear, I have to sell my home.
Sure.
to get the equity.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine.
All right.
So either way, but it's either gonna be cash, they're gonna pay cash, or they're gonna finance. If they're gonna pay cash, what do I want? Proof of funds. If they're getting financing, yeah, I want a pre-approval letter, okay? So that's the next thing. So in fact, let's just write it here, money. So that's the next thing I wanna ask them in this meeting is, okay, got it, how do you plan to pay for it? They're gonna say cash, good loan, they might say I gotta sell my house, whatever. What?
I still.
You don't want?
Well,
No, I don't plan on. Great, let me refer you over to Randy. He's not here. He told me he won't be here the next 2 days. He's going to New York, so. I know. So, okay, so money. Then the next thing I'm gonna talk to them about is the buyer broker. But I call it, let me tell you how I work, okay? So what I'm gonna then do is I'm gonna say, okay, let me tell you how I work. The idea behind this though is to get them to sign a buyer broker. Most agents are worried, scared, whatever, don't ask for somebody to sign a buyer broker. And if you'll do what we're talking about, it is very easy to get somebody to sign a buyer broker. Because what you saw, remember yesterday, what you saw in the little role play that Ed and I did? I guarantee you, if you were a client and I was the agent at the end, I then said, hey,
I would have signed.
yeah, he would have signed. Like, there's no problem. Because we create a connection to where, yeah, no, you are who I want to use. So I'm going to use this. This is what I'm going to say. Let me tell you how I work. I'm going to go out and look at every home in the market in your price range, but I'm only going to show you the ones that meet your needs. Now, remember, we've just sat and talked for however long, half hour, 45 minutes about their needs. So I'm going to be saying, I'm gonna go out and look at every home in the market in your price range, but I'm only gonna show you the ones that actually meet your needs. My experience, I'm gonna have to look at 10 to find one that would work for you. What that means is we're gonna go out and look at 3 or 4 homes. I will have previewed 30 to 40 homes for us to go look at. I'm willing to do that, provided that during the time we're working together, you'll commit to working exclusively with me. And then they'll say yes, and you say, great, I've got that, an agreement that states that.
Are those numbers true? In other words, you do look at that many homes to find one?
Yes, so now let me explain the difference though on it is. When I first learned this, we didn't have photos on the MLS.
Gotcha.
Like, we had the MLS that you could go to on the computer, but there were no photos. And so back then, you actually did have to go out and preview. Although, you did even hear Ken say yesterday, I think it was yesterday that he said it, that he talked about going out and previewing the houses. So the answer is yes, and especially because some of the things, now keep in mind, some of these things they talk about here, our whole reason for doing this is for what?
Crystallization.
Okay, good. Is to cause crystallization, and the features provide the benefit. So I do have to occasionally go out, Karen there. And then. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, so keep in mind that there are gonna be times you potentially do have to go out and actually preview. Now, the reason I brought up the photos online is a lot of the previewing can actually just be done by looking at photos. Like if they were saying it needs to have a lot of light in the house for what, that's what provides the benefit, then I might go on and preview the photos of houses to make sure that there is enough windows or whatever to be like. But again, sometimes you might actually have to go out to the house to see it first to say, yeah, this would work for what they're looking for. So yes, the answer is yes. Is you're gonna have to preview. Now, luckily, like I said, for today, we can do it a lot easier because a lot of it can be on the computer. But when I first learned this, yep, you went out and drove around and looked at the houses to see, is this gonna work or not?
Related to yesterday we talked about.
Yeah.
They say you better be neutral. Don't tell them the kind of things you prefer.
Yeah.
But I had a buyer. She was looking for house in Woodbury Park because it's very close to where she works. However, it's like a free market. She couldn't make it. Then she found one by herself because everybody can access those resources from online. So she found one in Ventura, which is far away.
Yeah.
So at the beginning, I said it's not good for you because you take you like a rush hour, maybe take you an hour to get there.
Yeah.
But she insisted. So anyway, we bought it. And we made a good offer. We bought it. But now she come back, say she wanted another one in Newbury Park. So I mean, it's okay for me because I have an extra deal.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's good for her. That kind of things. When I saw she asked me to find another place in Newbury Park now. I'm keep thinking about it. Should I say something or I just like really don't say anything?
Yeah, so I would say for me, it's hard for me to say 100% which way on that, but I would say for me, yeah, it's more than likely, because how long ago did they buy in Ventura?
It's this year, January.
Oh, so it hasn't
Yeah.
even been a year yet.
But that was when you couldn't get a house out here.
That's what I was gonna say, is that's what was going on, is because of that is what created the, let's just go do this with people. I think, so, and I actually said this a little while ago, but I think what's going on in the market may change that a little. But I actually said, once inventories start to come back, we're gonna have a bunch of people who bought a house they didn't really, that didn't
Yes.
meet their needs,
Just to buy a
That's it.
house, yeah.
just to buy a house, that are gonna want to sell their house to then buy another one. So I'll be interested to see how that plays out though now with interest rates where they're at and things, which I really think too, people just gotta get used to that. Now, it might take a year, but people, once they get used to where the rates are, they're gonna then start buying again. They'll figure out ways, newer programs, whatever will come out to help people figure out.
People
ways
adjust for
to-
the norm.
Exactly.
They just do.
Yes.
They got used to 2% real quick.
It's easy to do that. So yeah, I will not be surprised. So I would say, I would not try to talk her out of it because that is actually what she really wanted in the first place. So when you ask that, to some extent, and I wouldn't even have done this, but if you were gonna talk them out of something, it would have been, you should have talked them out of the Ventura one, because that wasn't what they wanted. But I also understand what was going on in the market and all those kinds of things, and it probably was just what we can get, so let's take it and we'll deal with driving. But then, like you said, after a year of doing that, now you're like, I don't wanna keep driving. So yeah, I wouldn't take the deal.
Out of curiosity, was Utah similar to California when it came to the frenzy of people running out saying, I gotta get a home?
Oh, yeah.
I was.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think the whole country was, except for Mississippi. I don't think you did Mississippi.
I had no idea.
I own 2 investment properties there, and they
Oh,
still
God
are not,
bless you.
they still haven't gone up in value. I'm like, ah. So, anyway. All right. So we good with that's how I'm gonna do is, let me tell you how I work. I'm gonna go out and look at every home in the market, but I'm all in your price range, but I'm only gonna show you the ones that meet your needs. So what that means is if we're gonna go out and, in my experience is I have to look at 10 to find one. So if we're gonna go look at 3 or 4, I gotta preview 30 to 40. I'm willing to do that, provided that during the time we're working together, you'll commit to working exclusive with me. They'll say yes, great. I have an agreement that states that in writing, have them sign it. Now you've got the buyer. Okay. Then what you're gonna do is set up an appointment to go look at houses. Then you wanna do this, what I call after setting the appointment. So after setting the appointment, what you wanna do is, after you've set the appointment, is I want to then prepare them to go out and look at the houses, okay? And this is what that's gonna sound like. Okay, so let's assume that Frank's my client, we sat down, we've gone through this, he's just signed the buyer broker, we've set an appointment of, hey, let's go out. So you'll get with the lender, you'll find out, what you qualify for, you'll get me the pre-approval letter by Friday. So would Saturday work for us to go out and look at the house? Okay, great. So here's what I want to do, is I want to make sure when we go out and look at houses on Saturday that you and I have an understanding, okay? Is we're going out to find you this house we've been talking about. And so after every house we go look at, I'm gonna ask you, do you want to write an offer? And a no is just as important to me as a yes, so I don't want you to feel pressure. Because that's not what I'm trying to do. I want to make sure I'm not wasting your time showing you properties that don't work for you. So after every home, I'm gonna ask you, do you want to write an offer? Is that okay? Yeah, okay. And then bring your checkbook, because we're gonna find you a house to buy. All right? Okay, now, because I've said that to him, we go out now and we look at the first house. After we walk out of the first house, I could say, okay, now Frank, remember I told you I was gonna ask you if you wanted to buy it, but I'm not trying to pressure you. I just want to make sure I'm not wasting your time. Is this a house you would want to write an offer?
Looks good. I need to look at the other house.
Okay, so you want to see the other ones first. Perfect. If I were you, I would want to do that too. So let's go. So we go to the next house. Come out of the house. All right, is this one you would want to write an offer of?
It looked like better than the first one.
So you liked it better than the first one. So we can throw the first one out. Okay, great. Let's go look at the next one. We go to the third one. Come out. Is this one you would want to write an offer of?
It looks different. I'm debating which one I like it more.
Okay, so you're not sure between the last one and this one. If you had to choose, which you don't, but if you had to right now, which one would you choose?
Maybe this one.
This one? Okay, well then let's forget the other one. And then if there have a fourth one, I would go do that on the fourth one and same thing. And then if he wants to write an offer, great, we go back and write an offer. If he doesn't want to write an offer, then here, how I approach it is I'm going to say, I am so sorry, Frank. I really want to only show you homes that you would want to make offers on. So I apologize that we didn't find that today. Help me understand what I need to find differently for the next one.
Hopefully total square foot.
Okay,
Bigger.
so just some things a little bigger, but as far as everything else, just needs to be a little bit. Okay, great. Now, so essentially all I'm gonna do is jump back into finding out some of these questions again. Is what did I miss? Because like, and part of what you're trying to do is just like, be like, hey, I wanna go help you find a house. I don't wanna waste your time. I come back to this a lot. I don't wanna waste your time. I don't wanna waste your time looking at houses just that aren't gonna work. So help me so that we don't do that. So I kind of blame it on me, but it also kind of subtly has him feel like, oh, we're buying a house. Yeah, make sense? All right, I saw him.
Well, I was just like, when he was like, well, I like this one. Would you ask for more details or you just like?
So yeah, I probably would actually. Yeah, no, I probably would ask for more.
Because you're not really looking.
But also, I wouldn't worry too much about it at that point because if we go to the next one, he wants to write an offer, I don't really care why he didn't. write
Okay.
the last one.
Yeah.
So I'm more so gonna do it at the end. And
Okay.
if at the end it didn't, then I'd say, okay, now let's go back and talk about what didn't work on these houses.
Okay.
And so here's the key is what you want to do is be in a position that after every single house, you can say, do you want to write an offer on this house? Because most agents that go look at the house, they come out, they go, so what'd you think? And then they go, it was nice. Okay, well, let's go to the next one. Like I want to set it up to them. That's the whole idea of this after setting the appointment is I want to set it up with them of I'm going to ask you, but a no is just as important to me as a yes. A no is just as important as a yes. I'm not looking for you to say yes. I just want you to be able to tell me, yes, you'd want to write an offer or no, you wouldn't. And I'm okay either way. I just want to make sure I'm not wasting your time. So I have to ask that question so that I know we're not wasting your time. All right. We good with that? Okay, we ready to go to the listing site?
Yep.
Yes? No?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
What's that? Yeah.
She should forward that to her. She can't, her son said, yeah, I got the email. So I sent it to her.
Yeah, and there's a passcode too.
Yeah, it's all on it.
It's on
Yeah, her son said, so she can make.
Still don't.
He's already good as hell. I'm just gonna.
We already
forward it.
got
I'm gonna see who's on there.
five hopped on. Jorge just hopped on.
Hey, guys.
We got- who else? Leslie's getting on right now. So it's 2, 4,
All right.
6 more.
Can they hear me okay?
I believe so.
Do I need to connect my AirPods?
I'll ask him.
Here, watch this.
Leanna just said we can hear you. She said get away from the camera. Do you want me to move the camera closer
I
to
don't
you?
care, whatever. I'm just gonna stand there. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. All right, here we go. You can put the camera wherever you want.
Okay.
All right. We're gonna now get into talking about the listing site. So we spent pretty much, yesterday mostly was about like, what's the process look like? And we did that process with a buyer. Now we're gonna get into the listing side of things. So here's where I wanna start with on the listing site. There are 2 parts to a listing presentation, okay? There's 2 parts to a listing presentation. Right.
Real close to you.
I know. I'm trying to zoom in so we see everything.
All right, so there's 2 parts to a listing presentation, okay? The first part of it is what we call choose me. The second part of it is gonna be price, okay? So we're gonna go through and talk about this in terms of the listing presentation. There's 2 pieces of it. The first thing that has to happen, so very similar, remember, for you guys that were here, remember we talked about, clear back here on day 1, we talked about, I can find it somewhere. That you gotta create a connection and some rapport before, and then you create value.
Right.
Well, the same thing has to happen here. In order for you to get the listing, so when you're going out to meet with a seller, there's 2 pieces of it. The first thing that has to happen is you gotta get them to choose you. Now, here's why. Does it matter what price I think their house is worth or what commission I'm gonna charge if they aren't gonna work with me?
No.
So that's why to begin with, before we get into talking about price or commission. So when I say price over here, that is the price of the house and or the commission that you're gonna charge. Which I mentioned to you guys, I think I did. Well, I know for sure I mentioned to you, my very first listing was at 7% because I just didn't know any different. Like nobody told me that you could change it, so I just went in and did 7. But after that, I have learned, and we'll talk about today as we go through this. I have done a lot of 8% commissions. And in fact, I have trained people to do it. And I have, especially by the way, the market we're in right now, you should be charging higher commissions. Just FYI, we got lazy the last couple of years and we started doing low commissions. Like, I mean, maybe it was already low, but we started doing even lower commissions. And I'm telling you, the market we're in now charging even higher. So where this is coming from, for me, 2008, 2009, I had a guy that I trained this on that exactly what we're going to talk about today. And he went out and actually started doing it. And every property he listed was at 8%. And I didn't agree with this, but this is what he did. He offered 5% to whoever brought in the buyer, and he kept 3%. Now I told him all along, the way I always did it, I did a lot of 8% listings. I would keep 4% and I would offer 4% to whoever brought in the buyer. Now, let me ask you guys a question. If I walked in today and said, hey guys, I just listed a property down the street or wherever in Camarillo, wherever, and we're offering 5% to whoever brings in the buyer, what would you guys do? Notice that, like every single one of you would want to go try to find a buyer for my listing because we're offering. So, and I'll talk you through how to do some of this, but this guy would offer 5%. Well, I always just offered 4% because I felt like agents would. Now, if I hadn't told you guys, oh, I know, it's high there too.
Yeah.
So, but if I hadn't told you 5%, if I had even just came in and said we're offering 4%, you guys would be excited about going to
Even
5%.
if you said you were offering 3, I would be excited.
Good point.
Like, sure, I'm in.
So here's the thing. Part of what we have to do is create the value, because here's the thing. Sellers will pay for value. Meaning, we aren't all driving around in Yugos. Some of you guys probably don't know what a Yugo is, right?
They don't make them anymore.
Well, I know.
She doesn't. Geo Metro.
Yeah,
Okay.
only worse. Geo Metro is a good way of saying it. Yeah. Which, by the way, when I married my wife, she owned a Geo Metro. We drove it from Salt Lake to Disneyland not long after we got married. You know what the best part about that was? We got 53 miles to the gallon. That was awesome.
That's why I call it Geo Metro.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, but here's the point. We all aren't out driving the exact same cheapest car you could buy on the market today. Why? Why do people go? I mean, especially we're in Westlake, right? You know, why do somebody go buy a Ferrari or a Rolls Royce or a Bentley or a Maserati? Why would they do that? Yeah, but it doesn't do anything different than. I mean, that's not true.
No.
But as far as getting from point A to point B,
It's the same.
it's
Comfort.
it's gonna work. So why would somebody go pay that kind of money for it?
Consider it valuable here in America.
Because they see the value in it, right? The same thing applies for you. Is the way you're going to get paid higher commission is create value. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to talk about that here. So there's 2 parts to the listing presentation. The first part is getting them to choose me. And we're going to talk about how to do that. But the other part of it is do not talk price until you know they've chosen. So how am I going to do that? Let's say that I'm on the phone prospecting. I come across somebody that says we've thought about selling our house. I ask for an appointment. I get an appointment. And they say, hey, before you come out, what are you going to charge me for a commission? Now, I just told you don't talk price, don't talk commission until you know if they've chosen. So how are you going to handle it? So just before you come out, give me an idea of what you charge your commission. Okay, good. Commissions are negotiable, and that could be one of the first things we talk about when I get to the appointment. So that's good. Yeah. Or if they pressed you, say, well, I know, but just give me an idea. You're gonna tell me 15%. 15%. Okay, never mind. Don't come back. Now, so here's how I will handle it. If somebody were to push on it and say, well, no, I mean, give me an idea. And then I would just say, well, again, commissions are negotiable and it could be as low as 0, but it could be as high as 10%. It really just depends on what is going to work best for you. Here's what I will tell you that is when I get out there, we're going to figure out what works best and what you want to do. And then we'll come to an agreement on the commission. So don't worry about that. We'll figure out the commission. And then I can get out and create the value before I then start talking commission. Okay. All right. So now, so how do I get them to choose me? There are 6 things that have to happen in order for them to choose you. And some of these will sound familiar, some of these will be new. Okay. But very similar to what we already talked about. The first thing that has to happen to get them to choose you is there's got to be a connection or rapport built. Okay. So not surprising, we're going to have to create a connection and some rapport. The next piece of this, so that we've talked about, no different than setting an appointment. You got to get connection and rapport. Well, in terms of you getting the listing and them choosing you, you got to create some connection and rapport. The next thing that's going to happen is I need to have them feel safe. Okay. The next 2 I'm going to give you are somewhat related. Think of them as being like heads and tails of a coin, meaning like they're connected, but they're not exactly the same. So the first one is you got to have them feel safe. When people feel safe, they will allow you to lead them. Okay. Is when somebody feels safe, they'll allow you then to lead them. So we got to get them to feel safe. The third thing that's going to happen is trust, is they have to trust you. So hopefully you can kind of see where those are pretty related in terms. But on this, whenever I didn't get a listing, so when I would go out and meet with somebody and they ended up listing with somebody else, and I would call them back and say, why did you end up choosing this other person? Or what did I, what was the difference, whatever. What do you think the number one answer that people usually give as to why they went with somebody else?
We just like them better.
Commission?
That's what I heard.
That's okay. So if that is what you're hearing, then what you need to take away from it is you got to do a better job of creating value. Because anytime commission becomes the issue, it's going to be because you didn't create enough value. Okay. So but that's good. Thank you. What else would be the reason?
We just really liked them.
Usually what they'll say is we just really liked them, or we felt safe. They'll either say we felt safe, or they'll say we just really trusted them. We liked the way that we connected, whatever better with it. Okay. So what we've got to do is this, and we're going to talk about how to do all these things as we go through this. Okay. Then number 4, what's that?
Oh, I'm just moving our tables.
Oh, okay. Then the next thing that has to happen is we have to separate ourselves. So you've got to separate yourself from the competition. Okay, so you're gonna have, the next thing that has to happen is you got to separate yourself from the competition. Well, here's the thing. And this is why we don't talk price till they've chosen us, is because if that's the case, then what Wendy said is right. If I have not separated myself from the competition, what is going to happen is it's going to come down to who's going to charge me. Because in the client's mind, in the public's mind, we're all no different. Yeah. And in fact, what value do they think we bring to the transaction? Well, not much, but what do they think we bring? What is the thing what is the thing most of them think we bring to the transaction?
Put it on the internet.
Put it on the MLS. And so in their mind, why wouldn't I go with the cheapest commission is because it's just to get it on the MLS. And for the last 2 years, there was probably a lot of truth to that. But in the current market that we're in and that we will be in for the next little while, that's not going to be the truth anymore. We're probably not going to, and in my, how long have I been now? 26, 27, something like that, years of doing this. I have never seen it as crazy as it was the last 2 years. Like even in 2005, 2006, it wasn't that crazy.
Yeah.
But we're going to be back to normal is really what this is. So like I always hesitate because I don't want people to feel like, oh, this is a crappy market. No, we're back to a normal, really. Is interest rates were too low, really, for where they should have been. They're probably closer to where they should be. We did get a little, and again, forgive the metaphor, but we probably did get a little drunk at the party. And so we get, meaning our prices going up so fast to where we get to deal with the hangover part of it is kind of where we're at right now. So just know though, that we got to separate ourselves from the competition. I'm going to show you how to do that as well. You've got to separate yourself from the competition and everybody else out there, because if you don't separate yourself, then in their mind, you're no different than anybody else. Why wouldn't I choose the lowest commission? Okay. Number 5 is, and this is again related to the separate yourself, but you've got to then create value. So we've got to create the value. And part of how we create the value is by separating ourselves from everybody else. Now, we spent Monday afternoon talking about the way that I teach to do open houses. If you explained that to a seller, like remember the first thing I told you about the way I do an open house, it's a lot of what?
Work.
A lot of work. And so part of what we want to do to create this value and separate ourselves is I want to tell the seller, this is what I'm going to do. I will use something else with the seller on this to separate myself and create value. Is I'm going to talk to them about target marketing. Is I'm going to share with them, and I'll show you where I would do that. But I'm going to talk to them about target marketing. Like we're going to go out and try to find where the buyers are coming from that are buying in your area, and then I'm going to go target them. See, the way most agents do marketing is they do a shotgun approach. We just blast it out there to everywhere and hope we can capture some people. Nothing wrong with that. But part of what I'm going to do to create value and separate myself from the competition with them is I'm going to show them how I'm going to go target market for them, to meaning go try to find where the most likely buyer is for their house and market to that. So instead of using a shotgun, which just sprays bullets kind of everywhere, I'm going to use more of a rifle, which is just, more targeted. Okay? That's the idea of that. So we've got to do that. And then number 6, after we've done all that stuff, then we're just going to have to close. Okay, we're going to have to close. Once we have done that, now it's going to be okay to talk about price and commission. But until I've done these things, I don't want to talk price or commission, because in their mind, it's the lowest commission is the most important thing. And so I've got to take away from that I got to do this stuff. And I'm going to show you how to do it through our listing presentation. And then we can get to price. All right. So here we go. We ready? Excited, Karen? She's like, sure. Yes, whatever. All right. So the first thing that's going to happen is an acronym. So I'm going to write it up here. I know most of you guys probably already know it, but I'm not sure everybody does. But it's TAP. TAP. What does TAP stand for? Okay, good. Say it loud.
Think, acknowledge, and promise.
Okay, so the first thing that you're going to do on any of your presentations, so we didn't talk about this with the buyer yesterday, but really, you should do this every single time. And in fact, I did this with you guys on Monday morning at 9 o'clock. I did the TAP. I started the presentation by thanking you for being here and appreciated you taking the time to come and spend with me. And then I gave you some promises as to I'm going to help you. And we talked about everything that we were going to go through. Okay. So we want to thank, acknowledge, and promise. So the first thing I want to do is just thank them for taking the time to meet with me. Acknowledge. Now, on the acknowledge part, what you want to do with this is try to acknowledge them something about the house. So you want to look for what is something on the curb appeal or whatever, something about the area, anything. Acknowledge something about the house. Like, for example, you walk up, you knock on the door, Frank opens the door, and I say, hey, thanks for meeting with me. You know, I noticed as I was walking up here, that beautiful flower bed. Who did that? Who did your flower bed for you? And then he's either gonna say me or my wife or my kid or whoever, you know, whatever it is though, but I'm acknowledging, wow, what, and here's the other thing that I throw in. That flower bed in the pictures we take to put your home up for sale is gonna look amazing. And so notice, I'm already subtly kind of talking about when we get your home listed, just right off the bat. But I'm doing it by acknowledging, wow, the curb appeal on your house is amazing. When we have the photographer come out and take the pictures for the MLS, it's gonna show so well. So I wanna acknowledge that. Then I'm gonna promise. And then I'm gonna say, so, hey, Frank, at the end of our meeting, I promise I'm gonna give you some really good information that's gonna help you make the best decision for you, whether it's sell or not sell. Okay, so that's the first thing we're gonna do. Then the next thing that I'm gonna do, so number 2, then, is gonna be look at the house. So the second thing I'm gonna do is look at the house. Now, there's 2 ways you can go about this in terms of looking at the house. The first one is I could have them show me around the house. So I could have them show me the home. Or the other option that you have on looking at the house is you going and looking at it without them showing you. And usually what I will say for that is I want to discover your home through the eyes of a buyer. And so I'd like to go take a look at the home without you showing me through. Now, there's advantages and disadvantages to both. So I'll let you decide which route you want to go. And I will also say there are times that when I go look at the house, that I 100% am going to say, I want them to walk me through it. There are other times when I'm going to be like, nope, I'm not having them show me through it. And part of that for me is dependent on a couple of things. The most important thing is, remember, in order for us to get the listing, we got to get them to choose us. And the first thing that has to happen is there's got to be a connection or some rapport that's built. If I don't feel like I have good connection or rapport with them, I am 100% going to have them walk me through the house as a way to build on that, create that connection and the rapport. So, and remember, part of that getting a connection and rapport is through asking questions, repeating and affirming, using empathy. If I were you, all that kind of stuff. So if I need the connection and rapport, I'm having them show me through the house. If I feel like I've got that connection and rapport, and maybe I have another appointment I'm going to need to get to, I'm probably going to say, let me just walk through. I want to discover it through the eyes of a buyer. So you decide how you do it. In fact, let me even say it this way. And this is just personal preference. But for me personally, I like the idea of doing a 2-step approach, meaning that I go out and look at the house first, then I come back to do the presentation. I just personally like that better. I know a lot of agents are like, I would never, ever do that. And that's totally fine too. And I would agree there are times when I'm going to not do a 2-step. If you gave it to me and said, you decide how you want to do it, I personally like doing it that way. I like going out and discovering. The other thing I would say, so for Wendy, it sounds like you've been an agent for a little while. How long have you?
7 years.
7 years. And Karen, how about you?
I'm returning to the industry.
Oh, okay.
So I took 13 years off.
Welcome back.
Thank
So
you.
how long were you licensed before?
About 9 years.
About 9 years. Okay, so you've been around too. Okay, so typically if we have newer agents here, I usually will tell a newer agent, especially like on their first one, do it as a 2-step. Like go out and look at the house, then come back and I'll show you why. But so just on that look at the house, you decide how you want to do it. Either you go out and do the whole presentation at once and have them show you through the house or not, either way. But that's going to be the next step. So first thank, acknowledge, promise, then go look at the house, either them showing you or not. Then after that, the next thing we're going to do, so number 3 on here is the third thing that I'm going to do is I want to give to them then a overview, or I call it sometimes a map. So the acronym for this one is going to be MAP, which that stands for motivation, ability, and price. Okay. So sometimes I'll say it's the map, sometimes I'll say you're give them an overview. Which again, this is what I did with you guys on Monday morning, is I said, here's what the week's gonna look like. Monday, we're gonna talk about lead generation and setting appointments. Tuesday, we're gonna talk about how to do a needs analysis. Wednesday, we're gonna do the listing presentation. So that's what we're doing here, is we're gonna give them this map or this overview of what we're gonna do. Now, in terms of what that looks like, that breaks down into 4 things. The first one is I'm first gonna try to find out their needs, wants, and expectations. So I'm gonna ask a bunch of questions. So I'm gonna write it here as needs, wants, expectations. Okay, but ultimately in parentheses, I'm gonna put questions. Okay, I'm gonna ask them a bunch of questions, but ultimately what I'm trying to do is to find out what their needs are, what their wants are, and what their expectations are going to be of me. But then also share with them my expectations of them. So the script that I use on it is basically, I'm going to say, first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about your needs, your wants, and ultimately what you would expect of me. And then I'll share with you what I would expect of you as a seller. So I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of questions to find out what your needs are, what your wants are, and ultimately what you would expect. Okay. Then after we've done that, now keep in mind, remember, I'm just we're not doing it yet. We're just telling them what we're going to do. It's kind of like when I told you guys on Monday, we're going to go through and talk about each of these things each day. We didn't do it at that point. I just gave you an overview. That's what we're doing here. So first, we're going to talk about your needs, your wants, and what you would expect, and I'll share with you what I would expect from a seller. Then after that, we're going to talk about what I do to get a home sold. Okay, so I'm going to write it up here as marketing, but that's not actually what we're going to do. So I'm writing it up here for you guys as marketing, but it's actually not. I'm not necessarily though going to talk to them about how many websites we put it on and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to say it to them is after we've talked about needs, wants, and expectations, then I'm going to show you what I do to get a home sold and what makes me different. Okay, so I've written it up here as marketing for you guys, but when you look back at your notes, make sure you don't look back at your notes as, oh, that's where I tell them how many websites we're going to put it on. Because you may or may not tell them how many websites we're going to put it on, depending on what comes up in the questions section up here, the needs, wants, and expectations. Okay? And I'll say more about all this. We're going to dive into this, all of it. I'm just giving you the overview. Okay. Then C or 3, the next thing we're going to do is talk about the market. Okay. The next thing that's going to happen is, and remember, again, I'll give you how I say all of this, but the next thing we're going to talk about is what's going on in the market, how that's going to affect the price of your home, and then ultimately what the price of your home is going to be. So that's how I'm going to say it to them. And then D is I'm going to write it here for you guys as close. Then I'm going to give them a close too. So let me show you what that whole thing looks like. So I'm going to say, so Frank, thanks for having me come out. Wow, that flower bed is amazing. It's going to look great on the pictures that we're going to take. And hey, I promise I'm going to give you some really good information. Whether we end up listing your home for sale or not, I'm going to provide you with information that will help you make that best decision for you. So let's go take a look at the house first so that I kind of know what the features and benefits of your home are. So we walk around the house. We come back, we sit down, and I say, all right, let me give you an overview of what we're going to talk about, Frank. Let me give you a map. First thing I want to do is I want to ask you a whole bunch of questions to find out what your needs, your wants, and ultimately your expectations would be. And then I'll share with you what I would expect from you. After that, we'll talk about what do I do to get a home sold? What makes me different than every other agent out there in the marketplace? And then after we've talked about what I do and what makes me different, we're going to talk about the market and what's going on in the market. We'll talk about how what's going on in the market today is going to affect the price of your home. And then ultimately we'll land on a price that we want to put your home up for sale for. So after we've done that, if you're comfortable and confident in everything I've had to say, then I'm just gonna ask you to sign some paperwork, okay? Now, notice what he said when I said, okay? He said, okay. So notice what I just did, is I've given him the overview of this, but I've also already told him at the end, I'm gonna do what?
Sign some paperwork.
I'm gonna ask you to sign the paperwork. But I did it in a way that doesn't feel pressuring, and I'm just saying, hey, after we've talked about all that stuff, if you're comfortable and you're confident in me, being the agent, to help you get your home sold, then I'll just have you sign the paperwork and we'll get started, okay? And then I always end it that way, okay?
Okay.
Because they want to go, okay, perfect. All right, so now, number 4. Number 4 then is going to be now the questions, okay? So now this is where I'm going to do the questions, or we could put in parentheses here, the needs, wants, and expectations. All right. So what up here, we talked about what we were going to do. Now we're actually going to do it. Everybody following me? For whatever reason, this part of it seems to be the part, and hopefully I've said it enough times that you get it, but for whatever reason, sometimes I go through and say this and people are like, wait a minute, I thought we already did that up here. I'm like, no, we didn't do it up here. We just talked about it. So everybody, you're clear on what we're doing?
Yeah.
How we're doing it?
It's just like the introduction.
Yeah,
That's all
this
it
is the introduction.
And now we're getting.
Now we're
into-
gonna do it. Yep, it was no different
That's
than
all
on,
I'm saying.
it was no different than on Monday morning when I said, here's what we're gonna do today, here's what we're gonna do Tuesday, here's what we're gonna do Wednesday, here's what we're gonna do Thursday. Okay, now let's go back and let's do what we were gonna do on Monday. That's what we're doing here. Okay, so now, we spent all day yesterday going through and talking about this whole idea of the directives, the prompters, the positive feedback, the modifiers. So that same concept is what we're gonna do now with this questions piece, okay? Now, in terms of the questions on this, here's the difference. When we did this with a buyer, we started with the buyer by just saying, describe for me your ideal home. The difference between a buyer and a seller is on the buyer, you can say, describe for me your ideal home, and then they'll usually talk and you can fill up this grid pretty good by just saying, what else? Keep going, tell me more. Versus with a seller, when I say describe, if I started it by saying, describe for me the ideal agent, how are they going to typically, like, give me an example of like what kind of responses. So Phil, you be the seller. Okay, so describe for me the ideal agent.
Somebody I can talk to when I have questions.
Okay, perfect.
Somebody knows the market.
Okay,
Somebody's gonna bring me a buyer.
okay, sure. What else? See, like
I want somebody to work for.
somebody to work for you. Okay, perfect. And what else?
Probably good enough.
See, notice like that's as much information as I got. Like, so notice the difference. So here's what I'm saying. The only difference between doing this with a buyer and a seller is on the buyer side, we can usually get a whole bunch of information. On the seller side, it's usually you're going to get 2, 3, 4 things. Like you're going to get kind of like somebody who keeps me informed, somebody that brings me a buyer that just, I don't know, just get my house sold. I don't know. That's what I want. So because of that, because that's what it looks like, we're going to have to end up asking more directives. So I'm going to give you a few more things that we will ask to fill the grid, okay? Because it's the same process. It's just, and this is why we did it with the buyer first, because it's so much easier to just, hey, describe for me your ideal home. Wow, what else? Keep going. Tell me more. Interesting. Oh, fascinating. What else? Keep going. Tell me more. What else? Keep going. And they will keep going a lot. On this, which actually just reminded me of something I didn't tell you about with the buyer.
Oh, man.
Not that important, but just one of the things, let me pause on the listing for a minute just to say this other
Your
thing. on-
buyer agent hat on.
Yeah, let me put the buyer agent hat on, is occasionally with a buyer, when you do this and you say, hey, describe for me your ideal home, I'll give you an actual scenario of that happened in real life. and that's what made me, as I was just saying this, I was thinking about this guy, is we had one guy that described for me your ideal home. He said, it will be a 10-minute walk from the University of Utah. We're like, okay, well, sure, what else? That's probably it. We're like, okay. So the agent, it wasn't me, it was another agent who did it. She came to me and said, okay, what do I do? Like, so it was kind of like your question this morning, like, so I said, okay, here's what you do. When that happens, if they're not giving you a whole lot of information, it's similar to what I said to Frank yesterday. Either he's not really a buyer, or I said, he really is that simple. I don't know. Let's find out. So I said, here's how we're going to find out. Go find 3 or 4 houses to go show them that are a 10-minute walk from the university. She said, okay. She goes and finds one, and she came back and she could only find a couple. And the one was, I don't remember if it was an actual house now or what, but it basically was 1 bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchen, and like,
It's tiny.
yeah, tiny. And she said, this is like what I can find. I said, okay, go show it. So she takes him, walks in, and he goes, yeah, this will work. Now, what she found out later on is he was a professor at the University of Utah, and he liked to ride his bike. But in the winter, when it snows, you can't really ride your bike if there's a ton of snow on the ground. So he was like, on a snowy day, I don't want to have to walk more than 10 minutes in the snow. So that, and what she found out is the only thing he used it for was to sleep and shower. Like he would go back at night, go to sleep, get up in the morning, take a shower, go back to the university. Was at the university all day long, get back just in time to go to sleep, get up, take a shower, go back. So it was like, I don't really care. It's just a place to change my clothes, sleep. That's it. So just kind of keep in mind that if you're struggling with somebody not giving you a whole lot of information. Now, what would have happened though, had this agent come back to me? If this agent had come back to me and said, okay, I went and showed him 3 properties and he didn't buy any of them, then I would have said, okay, then what you need to do is say, okay, tell me what didn't work for these. Like, and then you can jump right back into this. Okay, so tell me what didn't work. Well, it needs to be a little bigger. Okay, how much and all that stuff. All right, that was the only piece I forgot to say. All right, so back to the listing. So on the questions, you can, I'm going to give you a bunch of different questions. You decide which ones you want, like, decide if you don't, if you like, you come up with your own, whatever. But here's the idea, is what I'm just trying to do is to find out what they're expecting. Think of it this way. If we were in school and I had said to you guys, actually, let's just do it this way. Let's say on Monday, I had said to you guys, all right, on Thursday morning, we're going to take a test on everything that we've talked about from this week. You guys have 2 options. I can either throughout the week, as I'm going through the stuff and teaching you, I can tell you, okay, make a note about this because I'm going to ask you a question about this on the test. And you can go back later on and look at the notes. So I'll even give you the number order. Question number 1 on the test is going to be this. And so here's the answer. Or I said to you guys on Monday, or you can have the option of like, I won't tell you anything that's going to, I'll teach it to you. It's still the same, but I won't point out to you that it's going to be on the test. And on Thursday, when we take the test, you can't look at your notes. And if I had Monday morning said, which do you guys prefer? What would you have said?
You said the easy one, but they learn more with the second.
Okay, you might learn more with the second one, but you want to pass the test too, right?
Right.
So because of that, think of this as that same thing. So this questions piece is essentially what it is think of it like the game of Jeopardy that's on TV, is Alex Trebek would give you the answer and then you have to come up with a question. That's kind of what we're doing with this, is think of it that way, is the seller has all the answers to the test in their head and they will freely give it to you if you ask the right question. And if you'll think of it that way, is you're kind of you have the ability to create an open book test with the seller where they'll give you all the answers. They'll tell you everything you need to know in order to get them to list with you, and at a commission that is in Utah, I would say 7 or 8%. Now, down here, I always say you can get them to list with you at 6 or 7. Or you can believe it.
The sky.
I need to, Brandon, will you take on the challenge?
You want me to take over right now?
No, no.
No.
Take over.
Let's take, no, yeah.
The next property you go out listed at 8%. Can you do it? Will you try? Let me ask it that way. Will you try?
Depends on who it is.
I don't
If
care who it is.
If I don't know the person, if it's like my dad or my.
Well, oh
family,
yeah, well, if it's your mom,
Right.
here's the other problem. If it's your dad, he should do it himself.
Right?
He's already
Oh,
licensed.
he would.
Just kidding.
Can I just touch on a couple things for you? You know, I'm having a hard time sitting up.
I know, I've been impressed. You haven't said a word. Go ahead.
It's, so this concept with what Russ is teaching right now, seriously can change your whole business if you understand the concepts of what he's trying to teach. Remember when he talked about fundamental principles, that in the first one I was like, all right, pay attention. This is it. This listing presentation and what he's trying to give you, this formula here, seriously can change everything. And this is what we've coached to. This is what you coached me on and helped me understand. And once I got the concept and the idea, you seriously become so powerful in every single listing presentation you come into, because you get the answers to what they're looking for. But it's very similar to, that's why I started with the buyer side of understanding, asking good questions, connecting, listening to them, discovering. And that was the one part that I was surprised. I thought you were going to talk about the prequel, before meeting with them in person. But I like how you separated 2 parts, because the key is whoever gets the most information is going to win.
Yeah.
So that's your key. That's your goal. So you have to find out, and he's leading in a way when he talks about his tap and then his map and giving an overview, you're already taking control over the whole situation. And you're leading them, and they're already impressed just in terms of how you present yourself, how you act like a professional, how you have a game plan.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always necessarily go perfect to number 1, number 2, number 3. But when you get these concepts and it happens and you feel it happening through the presentation, you got it.
Yeah.
So that's where you can charge any commission. That's where you can create any value, because they hear it and they feel it in the presentation, and that's the key, is they know they feel comfortable with you. So
No, it's awesome.
is that enough on?
Yeah,
these
it's great.
intro?
Yeah, that was great. So here's the thing, is like,
So 8%.
yeah, 8%, try it. And I'll show you I'm gonna give you actually the way to do it, but I want one of you guys, I want somebody to go out and get an 8% listing and then email me and be like, I did it and it worked.
Beautiful.
There is one agent that I trained on this in Utah that she has never taken less than a 7%. And 7% is not a normal thing in Utah, by the way, either. And especially the last 2 years have created for us to where people are doing more 4 and 5s like what's happening here. But she'll go out and get a for sale by owner to list at 7. And why is somebody doing it for sale by owner?
Because they didn't want to.
They don't want to pay the commission, yet she'll go out and list a for sale by owner at 7%, doing exactly what we're talking about. So it works, just what Brandon's saying. Okay. All right. Now, so let's talk more about the questions. And Brandon, if you have some other ones you want to throw in that I don't say, I'm fine with that too. But so for me, I like starting with describe for me the ideal agent, or I will say, share with me ultimately what you're wanting to accomplish, something like that. I will either start with describe for me the ideal agent, or I will say to them, describe for me what you're ultimately trying to accomplish in getting your home sold. And so I'm going to start with that. And then from there, again, I will do the what else, keep going, tell me more, say more about it, whatever. Okay. Let's see. Another question that I will ask them is, tell me about how timing will be important, or share with me how timing is important. So I want to ask them a question about timing. Like, is there something that's behind, like how quickly this needs to get done? Okay.
Well, how would you ask that question?
So, yeah, I would just say, so Ed, share, so I'm gonna start with one of the other ones, either,
Okay.
you know, share with me about the ideal agent or whatever.
Blah, blah.
But then, help me understand or describe for me, how the timing.
Can you say what's your timing on this, or should you couch it by saying something different?
So I would just make sure you're starting it with either describe for me, share with me, tell me about, or help me understand.
Help me understand.
So you can do, help me understand how the timing is gonna affect this, or help me understand what's important about timing.
Okay, thank you.
Next, the one that I like to ask is, share with me or tell me about, help me understand how price will affect your decision. Share with me, help me understand, tell me about how price will affect your decision. Another one that you might want to use is, I just lost it, had it in the tip of my tongue. Oh, yeah, so share with me ultimately what you would expect from the person who lists your home. So what are you gonna expect? Another one might be, what would the perfect scenario look like? And again, like I'm saying, I don't always use every one of these. I just kind of, for me, base it off of, there's a few that I do always use. So like I do always say, tell me about your past experience. I don't know if I said that already, but I usually will ask that one too. Tell me about your past experience with agents. And then some follow-up questions to that would be, what did you like? What did you think they should have done differently? So depending on how they respond to that, I'm looking for just kind of like, what are the things you liked? What did you not like? What do you think they should have done? Another question you could ask is, what would the scenario have to look like for you to be happy with what you paid in a commission or something like that?
If your home doesn't sell, how do you know you're having a good experience?
Yeah, there you go. I like that. If your home doesn't sell or hasn't sold yet, how would you know you're still having a good experience? I love that. And they might say, I won't be. I won't be having a good experience. Okay, well.
How could you answer that question?
Well, so what you're trying to future pace, especially with this market coming up, is that the house is going to sit on the market. So how do you know your agent's doing a good job?
Yeah.
Right? How do you know your agent's actively doing what you expect them to do, but the home isn't sold yet? So that's what you're trying to discover there. So a lot of it, especially in this market, is you want to future pace with your questions. But first you got to discover, as Russ is talking about, what are your expectations in the agent? How do you prefer to be communicated to? Right? Your future pace, and okay, we're going to talk every month. Do you prefer on Monday or Friday for an update? We'll talk about that. Get into that.
Yeah, good. So what Brandon's saying is right on, is just keep in mind, it's still kind of just this same process. I'm using these first ones to get the information, and then what he's saying there is what I'm gonna go through the who, what, when, where, how questions of how often would you want to be communicating? What would you want it to look like? So that was the whole idea yesterday, was helping you understand this part. That today, those are the questions to get you started, and then you'll jump into the modifier. So what would that look like, and how would you know, and how often do you want it? What form would you want it in, and all that? Okay. All right. The last question that I always ask, so regardless of the others that I've asked, the last one that I always ask them is, share with me what your biggest concern. I either say concern or your biggest fear. Share with me what your biggest concern is, or I would say, share with me what your biggest fear is, or I might even say, share with me what would keep you up at night in the process. You know, what about this process is going to be concerning, keep you up at night, have you worried, whatever. That question I have found tends to be, if you've asked the other ones and you have created some connection and rapport, That question will reveal the secret to you need to getting the listing. Go ahead, Brent.
So you had mentioned about like walking around the house. I know my personal preference is to walk with the client, especially if I'm still getting to know the client, right?
Yep.
And doing as much discovery. But the key question that I found that has given me a lot of the answers is challenges. What challenges do you anticipate when you sell your home?
Oh, good. I like that.
So it's asking.
Are you asking that when you walk through the house?
Yeah, when I walk through the house, when I'm talking to them, we're checking it out. I'm asking about the roof. I'm asking about. I want them to talk about plumbing. I want them to realize this isn't going to be a walk in the park, right? That you need a professional, that you need an expert who's going to not only help you get top dollar for this, but protect you in the process. That's also separating yourself from the competition. So what are the biggest challenges you anticipate? Even in a good market, the challenge was overcoming the appraisal, right? Homes were coming way over it. So how are you going to overcome that? In this market, it's going to be trying to create, interest and offers with the higher interest rate. How are we going to overcome that? What ideas do we have? So see what they know. And if they say, we really don't know, that's why we're talking to you. Again, you're establishing yourself as the authority and they're realizing that they need you. So that challenge question.
Yeah, I like that.
Really
Yeah. Yeah. What challenges do you anticipate or foresee? Good. I like it. All right. So that's the idea of the question. This question section is going to be, again, tie it back to here, is where I'm asked, I think of it as I'm filling the grid. I'm getting them to share with me their concerns and all that kind of stuff, whatever it is. I can then also ask modifier questions. So you're going to want to dig deeper on the questions. So as they're, let's say that I said, so tell me about your past experience working with agents. And they say, yeah, this last agent we had, they put the home on the market. They put a for sale sign out. We never heard from them ever again until you called to say that my house had come up as an expired listing. Like I didn't even know that it was going to expire. I didn't know what was going on with it. Okay, well, what do you think they should have done? So I'm just going to now start asking these who, what, when, where questions of them to get them to share with me more and more. And again, what I'm trying to do is get them to reveal all the secrets that they have of how they're going to choose an agent. But by doing that, and by asking the questions, repeating back and affirming and empathizing with them and all that had to be frustrating. If I were you, I would have felt like, what am I even paying for or whatever? But that's to get this connection and rapport, which will also allow them then to feel safe and to trust you. Okay. So we good on that? Any other questions on the questions? Yeah.
I just realized that this would have made dating a lot easier if you would have taught me this a long time ago. Just what are you looking for in a significant other?
That's right.
What are your expectations? How you want to be communicated to?
Yeah.
Yep. Think how much easier that would be.
Yeah. It would have been, you're right. I was trying to think of something funny to come back with.
It's your third day, you're a little tired.
What?
It's the third day.
It's the
you're a
third day,
little tired.
that's right. All right, number 5. Which we've been an hour and a half. Do you guys want to take a break?
Yes.
Brandon said yes. All right. 10 minutes good or you want 15? 10? Okay, it is 10:31. We'll start at 10:42.
You lucked out. baby. You lucked out.
How did she luck out?
She was like, I'm gonna go.
Oh.
Just go. You might not take a break.
No, I will always take a break if you guys ask me to. Any questions on Zoom? How are the Zoom people doing? Who do we got? Let's see. We got a few. Oh, I don't think, I didn't see Heather on there. Yeah, I don't see Heather. That's right. We're looking for Heather.
I'm just gonna turn it off if you don't have the whole day.
That's
so.
right.
Yeah, if you're not paying attention, we can shut it off.
Yeah, I was sharpness it.
Trisha's here, I told her that you were here, so,
Cool.
yeah.
I was thinking I haven't seen her.
Yeah. So she's been out of town for a couple of weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Sacramento, the family. So Moxie is at 1:30 for
1:30.
sure.
For sure. I play old man softball now. We're playing in St. George in March.
How are you?
Yeah, we usually play like once a year out there.
That's cool.
We always stay out in Mesquite, gamble, hang out, golf, and then go out to St. George for the tournament.
That's cool.
The wives like to go to that one because then they can go to Zion and hang out, do the thing during the day. And all the other tournaments. They always tell
You know,
me
I
to
don't-
go.
I don't think I've ever been to Zion. I-
Brand was-
I might have when I was a kid and just, I don't remember, but. Cause we used to do a lot of family stuff
There's so
down there.
much stuff in Utah though. Everywhere you go, it's like it doesn't come from California. Well, the need for a local probably to go there.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's not necessary. It's probably.
And I go to St. George a lot for baseball.
Yeah, there's
We
probably
do a
other
lot of
comparable things. So.
Are all the skiing areas open now around Utah? As far
They're
as all
just
the-
starting to open,
just starting now.
which I don't know how, because we really haven't had much snow till.
Well, they must have been making it probably.
I think they've been making it, but hasn't even really been cold enough to make
Oh,
snow.
okay.
Really, we had a hot summer. We usually have in the summer, I think 20 days that hit 100.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I was there playing. in the
So-
tournament.
so-
This year,
I didn't
this
know
year
that.
we had over 30 days.
I didn't know that. It's hot in the summertime there.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I've known now.
Yeah, well, it's dry. It's a dry heat, so it's not bad. But, yeah.
By the way, is the Salt Lake itself shrinking?
Yes,
It's substantially?
substantial.
And the reason for that is this nature?
I think we, as the population is growing, we're using more and more of the water, so you don't have as much runoff that goes
Runoff
there.
of the-
4 months
Just
ago.
curious.
Because
It is shrinking, yeah.
we
Really?
never
Big
seen
time.
each other or met each other face to face.
Which is funny, because in the 80s, it was so full that our governor went and bought these pumps to try to pump water out of it.
Gotcha.
And then like right after they got them installed, it
Yeah,
quit and it started
started
shrinking. It was like, I don't know if they ever even turned them on. It started shrinking by the time we got them on.
It's beautiful layout. We're
Yeah.
talking like the canyon in there at St. George.
Sounds
Yeah, it's like,
Oh, it's the.
It is fun.
Play dirt that you have out there.
Although, that's what I was just gonna say, my wife hates it for baseball though.
Oh my gosh.
Although,
I
um,
went in and said hi to him.
there is some stuff that she found that will get them perfectly clean, and I'm trying to remember what it was called.
Text me, actually, I've tried like oxygen, bleach, everything, it just doesn't come out of it.
I'll text her.
You know what?
I left my pants in like just a pot of OxyClean and bleach for a day and still didn't come out.
As far as the state,
Yeah, so every time you slide, you get
So.
red dirt just embedded into the pants. And
Yeah,
you
I'll
know,
text her. and find out. It's,
I can't even
shoot,
tell
I
you.
know,
it's funny because everybody else has the same stains, so they all have the same. You can't get it out.
yeah, I'll have to tell you, but you get this stuff, you put it in there, and then you just soak it overnight,
So it's,
and then in the morning you wash it. And there it goes.
Oh my
I think
gosh.
it's the coolest.
It's-
It's like designed for getting rust.
Right.
And it might even be called rust cells or something.
That's
She'll
why
get
it's-
back to you.
Yeah.
Fitzgerald. I saw, I did see George over by Topeka.
And you ran 100 miles?
I did.
Walking in here was.
I know. Well, that's why I can't even put my feet in shoes right now. They're so
Yeah?
swollen. Yeah, they're like little, like
So I used to run cross country.
they're
in high
little
school.
puppies. You see,
Yeah,
like
I
that's
see it.
Other coffee.
It's like just, that's like, I never wanna run again.
It's funny, I started running in my late 30s.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like kind of like that.
Yeah. It is, the feeling though, because I started doing a little bit, I play sports still, and I still run for sports, but it was like the running out, is like, you know, any sport I played in high school, we ran. Oh. But.
The more desirable.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're healthy, you're gonna last longer.
Exactly.
You know what's good.
And it's just how I was raised.
And it's so crazy because.
Yeah,
It's a school, I like, I mean, because I want you to do the talk, but ultimately.
We had this problem.
People at like 5:30, I'm like. That's so.
Andrew had to
So,
send it out. manually.
And so
Period.
that's what happened.
I think there's something we changed on the back end that is creating this problem.
And it's been really good, it's like a diversion from what all the norms that I thought were correct, and now I should my children differently. My daughter is in college, you know, she's very responsible, you know, and
Iron App. It's called Iron App. You got to get like Home Depot.
Yeah, iron out. I've heard of that.
And, but it works so good.
so like I said, this started and then it just became.
Oh, sorry,
an
one,
obsession.
the powder, not the spray, she said. The powder, the spray doesn't work well, the powder. Sorry.
So now she's an obsession. I was obsessed. I ran from 0 miles and I signed up for a half marathon 5 months later. She lost 80 pounds. Just like so.
That's awesome.
And then she became like, I'm gonna be a half marathon. And then I became a marathon.
Now ultra.
Then I did ultras. I did 50Ks,
Isn't
did
that the one
50
that-
milers. And
So-
then in 2019, my friend ran a 100 miler. And that is.
Getting all the emails done if I had a chance. so.
Drive 100 miles. It's further than going to Santa Barbara. So I said, I'm gonna do that one day.
That's,
And then during COVID, I said, I'm going to do this. And so I signed up.
that's amazing.
And here I am.
Inspirational.
And it's just funny. It's just like, I still can't really believe it.
That's crazy. But it's hard to buy.
I thought it was that I was like totally jamming the entire time. I was in the mountains. It's not just like I was on flats. I did almost 15,000.
Really appreciating your class.
Oh, thank you.
It's the
Over
best thing I
100
have
miles.
ever.
Over
Doesn't
20
even matter
hours,
that.
you know, it
What
was
do
just like, wow.
You
But
found
my
it?
mind
Was it?
was like,
That time I think I was weeks, right? I was not reading.
yeah, it's a 30-hour
I know
route,
you're
so those
good.
cutoffs
I mean,
anyway,
that's
so
not
they don't
possible,
want lost in the
But I feel
mountains
like
in the
I'm
middle of
far
the
away.
night. Because it's
Way
their
behind.
country
So I
and it's
feel
also
like
not
I'm better
There's
shut
one
off.
section where they tell you to be loud and I'm not low, so they
Get
say you
close.
sing. So I was singing the
You're
entire
so
time
fast.
during 5 miles, just like
Your
be
mind is
loud.
Yeah.
fast.
Just find
Yeah.
out.
It's I can't watch that. I'm usually very much slow or something like that.
Oh, good.
But now I feel like it's like
Dog here, some
very easy in my blood.
Like I was across the.
They're running across the dune.
I feel like
Yeah.
it's like relief. My
Oh, yeah.
a lot
So
of
her motivation was to get back to
myself.
Oh, good.
When I
But
learned
she got like so far and this sweet, the guy, like sweet
Sweet
comes
Hurt,
through,
yeah.
came out.
Deep
If
pronouncement.
they pass you,
Yeah.
they can get that
Exactly.
taken in.
to my
Yeah.
body.
Deep
Yeah.
It's like a
pronouncement.
separate thing.
Right.
I understand a lot.
Yeah.
If you force me to do it,
Keeps
I
action.
Exactly.
So.
And then it doesn't work.
Body
This way is much better.
is
You get
actually
more confident.
running.
If you feel like that way, you will keep asking questions.
Yeah.
So we get a something and then also get
My
a more.
biological.
Good.
So it's
background is
it's
all
much
I
better
just-
than carry all the same time. Basically,
Right.
And
I'm glad the information there. I can refer back to the
endurance long distance runners.
other feeling.
And I-
You should
That's
ask.
Because I have a difference in my muscles are
Talk
made.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
realize
and
that
he's
if I
the
keep
runner.
talking,
He's
then it's I
it's funny because
will nervous.
the past, they
So I
only
try
travel
not
one
to.
foot.
Yeah.
And they only travel
Embarrassed.
over long
Everybody.
distances.
Physiological structure.
It's a pen, I
Because
know
there's no
about
way
it.
to travel in these, you know, all
It's
across the
right.
islands and the mountains and
Yeah.
everything.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, we ready?
Yeah. so it's
so.
pretty-
Yeah, like,
I love
did
it.
like the bigger picture.
And that's, and I love reading, so I.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's cool. Knowledge is power.
Sure.
Okay, so any questions?
Any questions on the question?
Any questions on the questions? Okay, so I actually do want to just say something. I hope you're okay with me saying, Frank.
Yeah, no problem.
But Frank was just telling me that, because did you go through the whole thing before or just parts of what I trained?
I think it's even more than that. It was also the listing agreement, all those technical.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's longer than this one.
Yeah.
Like a whole week or something.
Okay.
That was 3-4 years.
Yeah, so he went through this a while back, but he was just telling me he feels like he's learning so much more this time through it, and partially because like he's more ready for it, I guess, right?
Yes.
And so, and same thing with Yvette, you've come through, and Nicole's been through parts.
Yeah.
And Ed's been to some, I think Phil, you've been to some, but that's one of those things where, like, honestly, I would recommend for you that you should come. Don't look at it as a one and done kind of a thing, because for me, in fact, the kind of the background for how I ended up doing this, what I'm doing, is I had started with Coldwell Banker. I told you guys kind of the story about how I went from contacts to setting appointments and all of that. And then I one day had kind of this, well, there was more to it than what I'm saying, but I decided I was going to leave to go to a different company. So I had left and gone to a different company, and I got over there. And the reason I left, actually, I will give you a little more of it. The reason I left to go to this other company was because I felt like the commission split that I was on, like I felt like I want to give myself a raise. I'm going to go to this other company where I get a higher split. So I left and went over to this other company, to where basically I went to a Remax where I got 100% split. But the interesting thing that happened when I did that was my income went down. So one of the things that I will say to get a higher commission to people, and I say this to agents too, but one of the things to keep in mind, if you ever get into that trap of feeling like, oh, I have to give up so much money, does it really matter how much money you pay somebody if you take home more money? Does it matter?
No.
Like, would you care? Meaning, what I'm saying is, if I said to you guys, hey, you're going to have to pay me, I'll be extreme, but let's just say I said to you, okay, in order for me to finish this training for you guys today, you're going to have to give me $500,000. But at the end of the training, you're going to go out and make $2 million by the end of the year. Does it really matter if you had to give me $500,000?
No.
If we could get $2 million by the end of the year, like that's kind of what, and I had to learn that lesson by going, oh, well, I'm giving all this money to the company. This is not uncommon. And by the way, usually there's something else that's bothering you before that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And we use then the commission as the excuse. But so I left and went to a Remax, and I was like, I'm going to give myself a $60,000 a year raise by going to Remax. So I left, went to Remax, and I made less money. So I didn't pay as much to the company, but I also, my income cut in about half. And I was like, oh, that wasn't a good idea. So I went back and I said, okay, I quit doing all the stuff that you guys teach, the company that I was with. And I said, I don't want to do that again. I need to get this so ingrained in me that I won't forget it, that I won't lose it. So what happened is I went to the lady that was doing the training for the company. Now, remember, I had connected with this other guy that became a mentor for me, but I went to the lady that was doing the training for the company and just said, can I help you out with doing the training? And she was like, yeah, sure. And so I just started going to the trainings, and I went and went and went and went and went, because I was like, I got to get this so ingrained in me, which is kind of what Frank was even just saying. I had to get it so ingrained into me so that it's who I was, not just me reading a script or whatever. And one day the lady said to me, do you want to take over and just start doing the trainings? And I was like, oh no, I don't want to do that. And then I went home and told my wife that the lady had said that. And my wife said, no, I think you should. And in fact, I kind of figured out later on, this lady was unhappy at the company. And she thought by quitting and then me taking the job, I don't think she was trying to sabotage me, but she thought I would jump in and take over the running of the training program and then all fall apart. And the company would come back to her and beg her, please come back and we'll pay you whatever you want to be paid to do that. And what happened is I took over the training and then I did an okay job, I guess. But yeah, I did a good job with it to where they never went back to her and asked her to come back. But so my point in that, my whole point in all of that was don't get to a scenario where you feel like, oh, I already went and did that. I've been to that training. I mean, it's kind of like, to use church as an example, like, do they ever really tell you anything new at church?
If you're lucky with a good pastor, right?
But yeah, but even if you got a new pastor, aren't they still just telling you the same thing? Repent, pay your tithing, like. You get my point, though, right?
I get you.
Like there's nothing like, so don't. The whole point though is, could we all still do better?
Of course.
So we have to keep going because of that. So this is the same thing with this in terms of real estate. I love, again, using baseball as an analogy. We just finished the World Series. The Astros ended up winning. My guess would be those guys will take a month or two off, but then guess what they're going to start doing?
Practice.
Training all over the house.
And guess what they're going to train on? The basics, the fundamentals, the practicing getting a ground ball. They're practicing their swings. They're looking. In fact, actually, I even had this thought last night. Don't ask me why, but I had this thought last night of what during the World Series, the thing that I kept noticing, almost every batter after they get done batting, they go down into the dugout and they grab an iPad and they're looking at what?
Watching what they did.
They're watching their swing to see what they did. Like, imagine if we approached real estate that way of like, okay, I'm going to go record my presentation so that I can go back and evaluate it to see how I could get better at it. Like, so go ahead.
That's why you got that.
Oh, that's why it's here. Yeah, that's why Brandon's recording me, so I can go back later on and watch it.
This is Cher. I'm not going to drop names, but I know people that are professional guitarists in bands. Very well-known people. And at the end of the tour or at the end of the year, they actually go and work with somebody else on technique, practice, all the basics from scales to music. They never stop. In fact, Segovia, one of the most greatest classical guitarists of all time, the day he died, he was at 82, 83, he was practicing.
Yeah.
So you never really.
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
exactly right.
Yeah.
Brandon?
Yeah, no, it's just, I mean, you're spot on with it, and it's hard to understand, especially coming, just speaking from an agent's perspective, right? We want to make as much as we can, especially as times start getting tighter, you start focusing more on the split. And the key is, it's what's your 1099? What are you walking away
That's
with
just it. At the end of the day, are you making
growing
money?
your money? Are you taking home more money? Because I know my very first year in real estate, I was 22, I felt pretty good. It's like I broke 6 figures at 22 years old. What did I actually walk away with after expenses, after taxes, after everything else? Maybe 40,000, right?
Wow.
So I was probably better off making $12 an hour, where I didn't have to spend all the money that I was to feel like I was making 100. It's what you walk away with.
Right.
So you have to look at it as a business. And yes, we want to limit our expenses, but ultimately, are you putting yourself in an environment like what Russ is talking about, that you're constantly reminded on what to focus on to make sure that you're doing the right things that are going to get you the right results?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and so that's where, again, just, I would say, don't look at it as, I've been to that class.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, check the box, okay. And so I appreciate you saying that, Frank, about how, because the thing is, it's kind of the idea of you never cross the same river or stream twice, because either you've changed or it's changed. And that's the same thing with the training, is you'll pick up different things. It's funny to me, and like sometimes people will come to the training and they'll be like, I've been to this before and you've never said that. And I'm like, I say it every single time. Like, whatever. So anyway, I appreciate the feedback. So thank you. All right, number 5. Number 5 then is gonna be what I like to call the plan of action, okay? Plan of action. Okay. The idea of number 5 is, okay, now what? So now remember up here, questions, number 4 was A up here, the needs, wants, and expectations. B, marketing is really our plan of action. And so what we're gonna do now is in this presentation with the seller is we've asked all these questions, we've gotten all this information. Now the next step is I'm gonna now take all of the information they've given me and show them how I'm going to meet the needs that they have. Okay? So for example, using Brandon's, what are the challenges you expect to see? And if they tell me what the challenges are here, under my plan of action is I can show them, here's what I'm gonna do to resolve that concern, to overcome that challenge. The challenge that I have in training you on this is I don't know what here that they're gonna say up here. And so I'll give you an example that, and this one actually happened in California. So we had an agent that had come to this class. And in the class, the agent said that he was going to get an opportunity to go out on a listing that at that time was a $15 million listing. Wow. Okay. Which, and this was 20 plus years ago. So imagine what that $15 million house would be today here in California. But so a $15 million house, and the agent came to the class saying, I've got this opportunity, how do I do it? And so we walked him through this and said, what you're gonna do then is you're gonna go ask these questions. And remember I said to you guys right before we took the break, that part of what you're gonna do is for me, a lot of asking the precursor questions that I had you guys wrote down is to create the connection rapport so that when I say, tell me about your biggest concern or what's going to keep you up at night, or Brandon's, what challenges do you have? All of those ones are around me figuring out up here what is kind of going to be the main thing they're looking for, okay? So that then you can present back to them what you're going to do. So this agent goes out. Now, the background on this story was that it was an elderly woman that was selling the home. Her husband had passed away, and they've got this humongous house now, $15 million. And the agent goes out and says, okay, I'm going to just follow exactly this process. So the agent goes out, sits down with her, walks through the home, asks the questions. In asking the questions, gets to the end and says, so what's your biggest concern? What's your biggest fear? And the agent, the lady says, I've interviewed, and I don't remember if it was 2 or 3 other agents, but she'd interviewed 2 or 3 other agents before this agent. And she said, every one of them talked to me about how many people they were going to be bringing through the house. They were talking about putting it on their office tour. They were talking about putting it on their board tour. Every one of them was just talking about all the homes that they were going, or all the people that were going to come walk through my house. And she said, I don't know if you noticed the white carpet in one of the rooms. Mm-hmm. And he says, yeah, I did notice that. It was really pretty. And she said, that was a gift from my husband. She said, that was one of the last gifts that my husband gave to me before he passed away, was that white carpet. And it was like handmade in Peru or something. I don't know where it was, but something like that, to where he'd spent a ton of money on this. Mm-hmm. And she said, all I can picture is all of these people walking through the house and my white carpet being destroyed before I even move out. Okay, so that's the idea of this question section, is we're trying to get them to tell us what are the biggest concerns that they have about getting the home sold. Once they do that, now we can come back and present to them, this is what I'm going to do. So what the agent did was this, is he said, okay, well, let me tell you what makes me different than every other agent out there. So that's part of what we want to do. Remember, we've got to separate ourselves here. How we're going to do that is down here. So under this plan of action, what we want to say is something like this. Most agents, and then fill in the blank. Like you're gonna say, you know, what you told me is not uncommon for most agents. And so what this agent said to her is, hey, you know, what you said is right on. That's most agents are gonna just try to bring as many people to walk through your house, agents to walk through your house, because then it feels like to you that they're doing their job. But you're gonna say, not me. So you're gonna say, most agents, fill in the blank, not me. And then you're gonna say, I, and then whatever, fill in the blank, okay? So, and that's not, as I'm saying it, I'm like, I don't know that that's exactly the way I usually say it, but the gist of it is that's how it is, hey, what you've just talked about is what most agents do. That's how most agents are gonna do it. And then I usually will tell them kind of the why like that. Most agents are going to try to bring it on the office tour, the board tour. They're going to try to get as many agents walking through your house as they can, because it's going to then feel like to you they're doing their job, but not me. That's not how I work. Let me tell you how I work. And then you're going to go into, so in this scenario, the agent said, I'm actually not going to let just anybody come walk through your house. Because clearly, a $15 million house, people are going to want to walk through it just to go see what it looks like.
Exactly.
I
So-
would be there.
Yeah, so I'm not going to do that. I'm only going to let people come through your house that we know can afford your house and that could buy your house. So I'm going to not let a ton of people through. The other thing I'm going to do is I am going to go down to the medical supply store and I'm going to buy a box of booties. And then when people come to the house, we're gonna have them put on the booties as they walk through so that we can make sure we protect your carpet. Guess who got the listing?
We did.
I wouldn't be telling the story if you didn't. So, yeah, he got the
And he
listing.
didn't get it.
Yeah, he didn't get it, somebody else got it. No, he got the listing and he got it over this one thing of because essentially what I'm wanting you to hear from this is up here is listening to what they say. Down here is saying, this is how I'm going to take care of you. Once we do that, creates then this connection and rapport. It makes them feel safe. They feel like they can trust you. You've now separated yourself and hopefully then created some value. Okay? So one other story that this one actually is, I shared this down here one time, which this one was actually, I got this one from somebody else. So I was no part of this one, but this is a real estate investor that I heard tell the story. And I was like, that fits perfectly with what we're trying to do here. And I can't remember, I felt like Nicole, it was you.
What?
Did you listen to Pace Morby?
No.
Did any of you guys know who he
No.
is? Okay. So for some reason I was thinking it was you. I was thinking, was it Nicole that said, oh, I heard that story.
What was the person's name?
Pace Morby. Yeah. Okay. So he's a real estate investor in Arizona, but he what?
Hi. Don't interrupt. Keep going.
No, we were.
More pens?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have donuts still, just pens. This way.
Yeah. Oh no, I was just gonna say. I think Leanna's online. Leanna, Kendall just showed up with
The
donuts.
donuts are here, finally. How's it going today? What are you
Fantastic.
guys covering?
The listing presentation.
Ooh, do you need me to be a seller? I'm a good actor. No, I don't want to sell. You will not list my home. You can practice objection handling.
We
You
might
just let
have
me
to do
know.
that.
My calling is for
We'll
theater, so you just tell me. I'm not gonna interrupt. Keep going.
And you were worried about
Sit in the back.
I
I know.
That's funny. Okay, I don't even know where we were. now.
Sorry, I told you. I know, I'm sorry. Listing presentation.
No, I was telling Leanna that you brought donuts.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody's story about.
Oh, yes, okay, so, yeah. So this is a real estate investor guy, but the story fits perfectly with this. And the idea of it is just back to asking enough questions to figure out where it's at. So what happened is this guy went out to meet with this lady about buying her house. And so but keep in mind, even though this is about buying her house, the principle still matches up exactly with what we're talking about, which is why I love the story. Is So he goes out there to meet with her and he's talking to her and he's asking her a bunch of questions. And what ends up happening is she ends up telling him what other people had offered her to buy her house for. And he was like, I can't pay that much for your house. And, but in the process of being there, he had asked her this question of like, what's your biggest concern of you selling your house? And she said, well, my biggest concern is the house that I'm buying is not going to be ready for a few months. And so because of that, I have these rabbits that I don't know what I'm going to do with them. So my biggest concern on this whole process is what am I going to do with these rabbits until my new house is ready? And he says to her, now this is after the fact. So after the fact of where she said, oh, well, I've got somebody else that'll pay more money. He says to her, hey, so if you would like, I could call my mom. She has a farm and she could take your bunnies until your new place is ready. And she was like, are you serious? And he said, yeah. And she said, even though I'm not going to sell you my house. And he said, yeah, I'll just call my mom and ask her, and I'm sure she'll be okay with it, but then I'll let you know. So he calls his mom, says, hey, I got this lady. She has nowhere for their bunnies. Can you take her bunnies until her house is ready? She says, yeah. So he calls the lady back, says, hey, FYI, I just want to let you know that my mom will take your bunnies. So she'll hold them for you, or whatever. I don't know, hold them for you. It's the right, take care of them for you. And it's not a problem. And she says, wow, I really appreciate that. Talk to you later. Bye. Click. Next day, calls him up, says, you know what? I've been thinking about it. I want you to buy my house. So even though, she says, I want you to buy my house. And he says, yeah, but I can't pay what you said the other people have offered you. And she said, I don't care. You cared about my bunnies. And so I want to sell you my house, not them. So here's the whole idea of this is you got to find the bunnies. That's the idea of this question section is find out for them what's their version of the bunnies or what's their version of the white carpet. What is the thing that they're most concerned about? And when you then can show them you have the answer to taking care of and relieving that concern or that challenge that they have, you're going to be the one they want to work with. Okay. So I'll give you a few other examples on this in terms of plan of action. So let's say that they had brought up the concern of agents not responding. Remember back here, our top complaints about real estate agents, what number one was? Don't return calls, okay? So like the communication side of things. So what we want to do is let's say that the person says, well, I had a bad experience with an agent in the past. You know, they came and listed my house, they disappeared, I never heard from them ever again. Okay, yeah, and then that's where you want to do down here. You know, unfortunately, there are a lot of agents that's how they do it. They get your listing and they don't care. In fact, I remember the first time as a newer agent, the first time I went out on a for sale by owner, that they were so unrealistic on price that I remember I went back to the office and one of the agents was there and said, hey, so how'd your for sale by owner listing appointment go? And I said, they were so unrealistic. Like there's just no way that the home would sell for that price. And they said, well, so what'd you do? And I said, I just told them, I'm sorry, I'm not the right agent for you. I can't help you. And this other agent that was one of the top agents at the time in the office said to me, who was it? I'll take the listing. I don't care. And I was like, and I was a newer agent. So then I was like, oh, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I should have gone and listed the property. What I observed though, over time, this guy actually is still an agent and he was with our company not long ago even actually, but he's not anymore. But he had this reputation of he would go list a house and he would go out and promise them the world and then never deliver on any of it. And if the house never sold, he just didn't care. Like it didn't matter. That's not how I am. So I just would say, you know, unfortunately, there are a lot of agents that's how they work, but not me. Let me tell you how I work. And then from there, what I'm going to say to them is I call my client every week. Now watch how I do this, okay? Because I'm going to say I call my client every week. Now, you have to decide what day of the week you're gonna do these seller calls. But you should have a time frame set in place that every week you call your sellers between this time and this time. 10 and 12, or when you decide a day and time. That every week you make your seller calls no matter what. Even if nothing's gone on, especially if nothing's gone on. You're gonna call them and tell them, hey, just wanna let you know, we had this many views, but as you know, we had nobody come and take a look at the property. But just wanted to keep you updated on, we haven't forgotten you, we're still working, we're doing everything we can. Now, so what I'm gonna say to the seller then, or this potential seller is, I do my seller calls for me, there was a time in my career, I always did them on Monday, but then I switched it to I always did them on Friday. And again, I think there's pluses and minuses, you just decide which you like better. Some agents like to do it on Monday because then you can give them a report of like what happened at the open house if you did one or whatever. You can give them, here's what happened over the weekend. For me personally, as I got further in my career, I always wanted to call on Friday. And the reason I always called on Friday morning was because I didn't want them calling me on Saturday frustrated. If they were frustrated with me, I wanted to know on Friday so I could deal with it, so I could have my weekend for myself. But that was just personal preference. So you just decide. It doesn't matter when, just pick a time, but once a week, this is when I do my seller calls. So now back to this. So they've said they're frustrated, blah, blah, blah. I say, okay, I get it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of agents that do that, but not me. Let me tell you how I work. I'm going to call you every Friday between 10 and noon. And then I'm going to say, so Frank, what would be the best phone number for me to call you on this Friday between 10 and noon to update you?
Either 05-616.
And he gave me a phone number. Now, what did I just do? What did I just do?
Set an expectation.
Okay, good. I set an expectation, but of what's the expectation besides the fact that I'm going to call him?
Getting the listing.
I just set the expectation that I'm listing his house and I'm going to be calling him on Friday to give him an update about it, even though it's Wednesday. I did a subtle close on him. So remember back here I did a close. Actually, let me back up to that. Back here, was the first time I kind of closed was up here when I said, oh, the curb appeal is so good. When we have the photographer come out and take pictures, your home is going to look so good when we post it on the MLS. And down here I did it. Hey, so Frank, if you're comfortable and confident with everything I have to say, I'm just going to ask you to sign some paperwork, okay? Okay. Now down here I'm saying again, well, so hey, I call my sellers every Friday. What number would you like me to call you on this Friday? Like I'm giving this subtle, notice how many times I've subtly kind of just, and this ties back to what I said with Yvette the other day of assume the close. Assume they're going to work with you. I'm just assuming we're going to be working together. So what number would you want me to call you on Friday? They tell me the phone number. Okay, great. Now, so let me give you a couple of other ones in terms of this. So communication is one that a lot of times will come up here is they want to make sure that they're informed and know what's going on. Great. Here's how I'm going to handle it. Most agents, and you always want to present it as most agents are going to do blah, but not me. And again, what I'm trying to do is separate myself from the competition by doing it. Okay. So another one on this might be, I'll give you a kind of an extreme one that you could use. But let's say that somebody was worried about their security or their safety. You know, I mean, they tell me about when you've asked them, tell me about your past experience. One of them says, oh, well, we had somebody that came and just walked into our house. They didn't have an appointment. We were sitting there eating dinner.
We had that. Our seller just recently, he said he woke up to an agent and her client in his room while he was sleeping at 8 a.m.
Woke up.
They were in the room.
That's what he said.
I've had that before where I had an appointment, but I opened the door and somebody was in there and then I didn't go in the
No,
room.
and then he also said he had a camera in there and another agent went back in after, got some food out of his fridge, sat on his couch and watched TV. So he had like a really negative.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. That's a perfect example. So let's assume that was the person then, okay?
That was so.
So here's how I would handle that with that person for me to separate myself is I would say, yep, unfortunately, that happens. Unfortunately, that kind of things happens, but not with me. And here's why. is because let me tell you how I work. And then now what I'm about to say, everybody's lockbox does what I'm about to say, but most
That's
don't.
what we did. We did
The
the CVS.
CVS could. But that's how I'm gonna approach this. I'm gonna say, you know what, unfortunately, the lock boxes that most agents use, and some of them use one that just the client could look at the combination and the client could come. What, now, I'm not trying to scare them, but I am just gonna say that does happen, right? Others, you will use a board one, but they don't have any safety on it. Anybody can walk up and open it at any time, but not mine. My lockbox, so we want to make it feel like mine's different. Even though every other agents will do this, most agents are never going to talk about it to the client, so it's going to separate yourself. So you say, my lockbox that I use, actually, I can put a code on there that even if they're in good standing with the board, they can't access it unless they know this secret code that I'm going to give to them.
We had a code list and she was adamant that we didn't use the CVS code to just put it on there. And I said, no, I told him we're using it. He's very nervous about it. He has cameras in the house. And it turned out an agent did try to open it without the code and called her and was like, oh, is there a CVS code? And she's like, well, do you have an appointment?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it happens.
So that's how I'm going to handle that is to again, just to separate myself is with the seller of saying, I can put a code on there that even an agent without having gotten an appointment, that way you don't have to worry about somebody coming and showing up in your house. That's the idea of this plan of action is we're taking their concerns, the things that are important to them down here now saying, here's how I'm going to meet those needs. Now, the only thing I will say on this is just don't tell them something you're not really going to do. Like meaning, let's say that up here under this questions, I had asked and they said something to me about, what would you expect if we were talking about communication? I said, what would you expect from your agent? And they say, well, I would want them to call me every single day and tell me what they did on marketing my house. Number one, don't say, yes, I'm going to do that unless you plan to do it. So that's part of what I would say in terms of this is make sure whatever you agree to down here, you're actually really going to be willing to do it. And if you're not, then don't say you'll do it.
Call you every minute.
Yeah, if they're like, I want you to call me every night and give me an update on what you did to get my house sold. In that case, I would say, perfect, I could do that, but it is gonna be a 15% commission. And I'm gonna give 3 to whoever brings in the buyer, and I'm keeping 12.
I'm gonna go find a buyer myself.
Yeah, and then I'll go find it myself. But either way, I'll gladly call you every single day for a 15% commission, so.
Have you ever had someone that anxious to say, call me?
No, I've never had.
Okay.
No, in fact, I'll tell you the opposite though, where I screwed up. I think that's why I'm good at doing the training is because I can be like, let me tell you what I did wrong. And then that way it'll help you know how not to do it. So I went out on a listing present. So this is actually an example of making sure that you are asking the questions. I went in Salt Lake area, kind of the area in Salt Lake where a lot of for the Utah Jazz, since that's our only really professional team that we have. Actually, I don't even know if they're professional this year, although they did beat both the Clippers and the Lakers this week. Are you guys Lakers fans? No, you're Pistons. Are you Pistons fans still? Do they haven't put them to AAA? I'm just kidding.
They allow them to play anymore.
So I'm kidding, but kind of the area, the exclusive area where the money is in Salt Lake, I got an opportunity to go list a property, but these were investment properties. So it was going to be 2 listings from this guy, but where he lived was I'll be honest, I was intimidated.
It was bougie.
Yeah. So I show up there and the person who had referred this guy to me too was like he's got a ridiculous amount of money. I'm like, okay. So anyway.
Is it George's house?
No, it's not George's house. No. So I show up to this guy's house, knock on the door. I'm already nervous as can be. I get in there, we start talking about the property, and he says to me this, look, I know how it works. I understand how real estate works. You don't need to call me, tell me what's gone on. Just call me when you get an offer. And I go, okay. So I signed everything. I leave this house. I got 2 listings. And at that time, both of them were $500,000 houses. They're probably both $1 million now, but But at that, well, the truth is, they weren't actually worth $500,000. But I didn't dare to tell them that they weren't worth $500,000. So I list them, put them on the market, and then I never called them. 2 months went by, we had no showings because they were overpriced. No showings, no offers, nothing. And 2 months later, I get a phone call and he's ticked. And he's like, why have you not called me? And I was like, sir, you told me not to call you until I got an offer, and I haven't gotten an offer yet. And he's like, well, I know that, but like you could have called me and said, your price too high, you need to reduce your price. And I was like, I didn't say this, but I was thinking, I didn't dare. So I was like, because why didn't because I was so intimidated when I met with the guy. That I was
Couldn't
like,
do that.
So anyway, needless to say, I lost the listing. So I learned my lesson though, like, so part of what I'm saying is there are a few things on here like communication. If they don't bring that up here, and in fact, let me even go back to the buyer for a second again. Remember back here on this filling the grid, I told you don't bring up stuff that if they don't bring it up, there's one exception. If they never bring up location for this house, you need to say, so where's this going to be located? Okay, so that's kind of how I feel with the seller over on this. If they don't bring up their concern of like you communicating with them, you need to bring that up of like, okay,
How do you want that?
how would you like me to be stated? So those are one of the questions, or a few of the questions you need to ask them up here. What do you want? Do you want text? Do you want a phone call? Like an email? Like what's your expectation that way? Okay. All right. We good on the questions, good on how to present. Now then, just think of it as the secret is find out what's important to them, then down here tell them how you're going to meet those needs. That's like really what the objective of this is. Okay, we good? Any questions?
So simple.
Yeah, I mean, it really is simple. Now, so let me give you one other quick story. I had it, and I know that this doesn't apply to any of you guys, but Brandon made me think of it earlier. I had an agent, well, in fact, actually, I wish Randy was here because he brought up, day one, he brought up about how young he is, and he was a little worried about it. I had an agent that was exactly that scenario, and they were talking about getting their first listing presentation, and I said, just go do this. If you go do this, you're going to look professional. I promise you, they're not going to worry about your age because you go do this, they're going to trust you. So the agent goes out and does it. And he follows it exactly the way, step by step here. Gets done with it. The people sign the paperwork. They list the home. He's ready to leave the house. And they go, because of, again, looking at how young he was, they said, so how long have you been doing this? And he, in his mind, he goes, they caught me. And he says, believe it or not, you guys were this is the first time I've ever met with somebody to help them get their house sold. And the sellers go, yeah, right. And he goes, no, really? Like, I promise, like, this is the very first time I've ever done this. And they were like, whatever. Like, how long have you been doing this? And he said, no, for real. This is the first one. And they finally went, whatever. Okay, well, we appreciate you. And we'll talk to you later, whatever. And he left. And he came back to the office. And he's like, I thought they caught me. But he said they actually felt, which is kind of what Brandon was alluding to, is if you go through and do this, you come across as very professional.
Mhm.
And so this agent who was young, they wouldn't believe him that it was his first time because they were like, you just seemed so professional. So anyway, so you got to do it. Okay, which we're not done, but this is kind of the main piece. So now, with that being said, after we've done all this, remember over here, there's two parts to the listing presentation. We should have now checked all the boxes here, with the exception of maybe the close. But we should have a connection and rapport. They should feel safe. They should trust you. You should now have separated yourself from the competition, and you should have created a bunch of value by walking them through this. Okay. So now that I'm to this point, I need to find out though, have they chosen me? So the next thing is I got to figure out is have they chosen me? Because the next thing I should talk about is price. Remember, that's up here was needs, wants, expectations, then what do I do to get a home sold? Then we're gonna talk about the market and the price of their house. Well, that's the next step, but I already told you guys, I can't do this till I find out if they've chosen me. So how am I gonna figure out if they've chosen me? Well, this is how. At this point, I'm gonna now stop, after I've answered all this, I'm gonna say, so Frank, is there any other questions you have, anything I haven't talked about that you feel like you need to understand better?
No.
Okay, so let me ask you this, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being you're ready to sign the paperwork, 1 being get out of my house right this second, where are we at?
9.
We're at a 9? Okay, so what would have to happen for us to get to a 10?
Basically, you can always improve somewhere here, there.
Okay,
So 9 is the highest for me.
okay, so really 9's the highest I would be able to ever get with you. Okay, great, so it sounds like you're happy, you're good with everything with me being the agent to help you get your home sold.
Yes.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and let's talk about then what's going on in the market, how that's going to affect your price. So that's what I would do. Now, what if though he said 5? So here's the key thing. When you say to them on a scale of 1 to 10, so down here after number 5, I guess, I'll flip the page and we'll call it number 6. Number 6 then is going to be, I'm going to have them now basically rank or rate. So I'm going to just put rank / rate. I'm going to have them now rate on a scale of 1 to 10. Okay. And the idea of this is I'm trying to find out, have they chosen? And so I just say, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we at? 10 being you're ready to sign the paperwork right now. 1 being get out of my house. I don't ever want to see you again. Where are we at? And then if they say anything but a 10, my answer is going to be, so what did I miss or what would have to happen for us to be in a 10? And it's not uncommon for what Frank said to have somebody go, oh, well, I just always figured, I gave you a 9 because I figured there's probably something I didn't think of. Okay, so really what you're saying is you feel comfortable then. Yep, okay, great. What if he said 5? Then I'm going to say, wow, I actually missed the mark big time, didn't I? Tell me, what did I miss? What would have to change? And then what you're looking for is for them to give to you what you didn't answer. So now they're just going to tell you the things you didn't cover that you needed to cover. And so it gives me a chance then to now cover it. That make sense?
Yes.
Say, well, you didn't talk about your commission.
Okay, good. So yeah, so let's use that. So Yvette said, what if they said, 8 or 7? And I say, okay, what would have to happen? Well, we haven't even talked about your commission yet or the price of the home. Then I would say, okay, let me ask you this, Yvette. Assuming we can come to an agreement on the price or the commission, whichever it was you said, are you comfortable with me being the agent? Okay, and if she says yes, then I'm going to proceed. If she says, well, I don't know, we're going to have to talk to another agent first. Then I'm going to go, okay. Now, here's for me, this is where I could go from, remember I said I personally just like doing a 2-step approach anyway? This is where for me, I would turn, even if I was planning on 1 appointment, I would turn it into a 2-step appointment right now. Because here's the thing. Remember I said, I'm not going to talk price till they've chosen me. So if she has not chosen me yet, and she's saying, I got to meet with another agent, great. Let's get back together after you meet with that other agent. Is how I would do it. Okay. Now, I do want to make sure you guys recognize though, if they're meeting with another agent and you leave without getting the listing agreement signed, there's a decent chance you aren't going to get the listing. So just recognize that. So there are some things that I do that will try to set them up for when I say set them up, meaning the other agents that are coming, there are some things that I will do to try to set them up for failure with the seller. And one of them being just doing this. Just the fact that you go through and do this, you're going to separate yourself. Because most agents' listing presentations consist of something like this. So Frank, let me tell you how awesome I am. I won this award. I got that award. I'm the top this. In fact, I am the #1 agent in my cubicle. Nobody can beat me.
Okay.
They've tried, but in my cubicle, I am the best.
Okay.
Like that's literally what most agents listing presentation. Look at all these awards. Look at this. I sold these houses. I sold that houses. It's all about me, 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 me. You walk in and go, so tell me about what's important to you. You totally are going to separate yourself. In fact, actually, real quick, I used to be with Coldwell Banker, and we had a manager that at Coldwell Banker, we had a listing presentation that was in a binder just like this. And I kid you not, so we were having a manager meeting one time, and this manager said, can I teach to the other managers in the company what I do when I teach a listing presentation to the agents in my office? And they said, yeah. So we had this get together where all the managers went kind of on this retreat. So we're up in the mountains in Utah, and we're sitting down in this conference room of a hotel, and imagine we're taking these tables and lining them up into like a square or rectangle. We're sitting there, and this manager pulls out his listing presentation book like this, and he opens it up and he goes, just like this. Coldwell Banker is named after Colbert Coldwell and Benjamin Banker. In 1906, Colbert Coldwell and Benjamin Banker were in San Francisco area after the fires. And people were taking advantage of the people that were buying and selling homes. And they decided they didn't want to do that, so they created Coldwell Banker. We are the #1 company or whatever. We're the, in terms of for an hour and a half, the guy sat there and went page by page.
You sat the whole
So
time.
I think what he was trying to do is if you do that, the seller will be like, just where do I sign so you'll shut up? But that, I'm telling you, that's the kind of stuff you're going to compete against. And if you'll go do this, what we're talking about, you'll totally set yourself apart from everybody else that's out there. Okay. All right. So I'm going to do rate or rank it to find out. Anything less than 10, I'm going to say what would have to happen for me to be to a 10. Anything that is, if it's price or commission, great. We'll talk about that next. Is it safe to assume, so I would say, Yvette, is it safe to assume if you and I come to an agreement on the commission, you'll list your house with me? Okay, great. Then let's go ahead and move on. I'll move to talk to this. Anything else, I'm cutting it off I'm not going to. So now let me actually give you real quick how I'm going to set her up to, or not her, but anybody else that comes in to fail. Is part of what I'm going to say to her is, okay, so you said you wanted to meet with some other agents before. Okay, great. I think you should. If I were you, I would want to do that too. What I want you to do is really pay attention to what they have to say. And more than anything, what I want you to do is ask them this. You should ask every single agent that you interview, how many buyers are there for your house? And if they tell you 1, then there is only one person that's going to buy your house. That's what they'll mean. Or they're going to tell you there's no way to know. If I were you and you get an agent that either tells you 1 or there's no way to know or there's a whole bunch, I would be concerned. Because what they're telling you is they don't have any idea. They don't know how to market a home. Because I know how many potential buyers there are for your house. And I want to share that with you, but I first want you to see from these other agents what kind of response you're going to get. Because if they can't tell you the number of potential buyers there are for your home, you should be concerned. So when could we get back together after you've met with them and talk about it? Okay. So, or I'll say, when is your last appointment? You got 2 more agents you're going to meet with. When do you do it?
Tomorrow and Friday.
Okay. Can I come Friday right after the last one? And you promise me you won't list with them until we've had a chance to talk.
Sure.
Okay, good. So that's how I would, if they're meeting with other people, that's how I'm going to approach it. Is I need you to promise me you won't list with them till we've had a chance to get back together so I can show you how I go about marketing. Now, what if they go, well, yeah, but at least tell me your commission or at least tell me the price you think I should list the home for. I'm going to say, I'll be happy to do that, but I have a proprietary way I go about it, which is why I was telling you that I want you to meet with these other people first, because once you've heard what they say and I share with you mine, you're gonna see the distinct difference. See, I wanna create the scenario, back to this stuff again. Creating some value or making her curious so that she won't, like, hey, sometimes they'll say, well, why won't you just share with me your proprietary stuff? Well, I'll be happy to as soon as you sign the listing agreement. And if you want, I'll be glad to call those other agents and tell them you've already listed with me. They don't even need to meet with you.
Trade secret.
Yeah, I just can't give you my trade secrets till you sign it.
Right.
And I'll be happy to do that. See, I want to create a scenario that either they say, fine, let's sign it right now, or that they're curious enough that they at least meet with the other people, and then when I come back, I can be. Now because here's what I found. Typically, they're going to list with the last person they meet with. So I want to be then the last one they're going to meet with. Sometimes, now I'm hoping that they'll cancel the other appointments so that I'm the last one that they met with in the beginning. Does that make sense? But that's kind of how I'm going to try to handle it. Okay. So now, next, number 7. Assuming now that they've said they're going to list with me, if we can come to an agreement on price or commission. The next thing we're going to do then is we're now going to talk about the price. And remember, on price, the first thing we're going to talk about is, I say remember. I think I said it. I know I just didn't write it down. We're now going to talk about the macro, the big picture. What's going on in the market? So you guys tell me. If I were to ask you guys today, tell me what's going on in the market today, how would you answer? What's going on in the market?
Interest rates are up.
Okay, interest rates have gone up. What else?
Inventory.
Inventory's going up.
Buyers are slowing down a little bit.
Buyers are
Buyer
slowing down a little
affordability
bit.
is down.
Okay, their affordability is down.
Staying on the market longer.
Okay,
Longer
staying
than
on the
it's
market
there.
longer. Good.
Stories.
But it's still a great time to sell your house.
No, good. I'm good. That's what we want to do with the macros. We just want to talk about, hey, the home sales have slowed a little bit. And the other thing I would be adding is there are still homes selling, but it's the homes that are priced the best that are going to get sold. It's not like it was even 6 months ago where we could throw it on at any price and you're going to get an offer even higher than that price. Those days are gone. We can't do that anymore. So we really need to make sure that we analyze the market and get your home priced competitively if we want to get it sold. Okay, that's how I'm going to do the macro. Next thing that I'm going to talk about with them then is pricing, and specifically our pricing strategy. Okay, is I'm now going to talk about with them the pricing and specifically a pricing strategy. And so this is again where this is the trade secrets, my proprietary information, whatever, that I'm going to use with them. And this is why I don't want to talk about it, because the last thing I want to do is give them away this and then they go list with somebody else and follow this strategy. Okay. So for me, I'm going to say, okay, we have a pricing strategy and we can get your home sold and we can do it in whatever the time frame they were wanting to get it done in. We just have to be willing to follow this pricing strategy. And this is what it looks like. Okay. If you were to go and do an analysis, now clearly there's always going to be exceptions, but as a general rule, and this has been this way for as long as I've had my license, and much longer than that, I'm sure, homes will sell or at least generate an offer if they are within 4% of where the market value of their house is. A home will sell or at least generate an offer if it's within 4% of where the price of it should be. As soon as you get to 5, 6, 7, 8% above what the market value of that house is, you're not going to get offers. And if you get above 7% of the market value, you're not even going to get showings. So if you're more than 7%, so here's what the pricing strategy looks like. And this is what I want to tell you. Part of what we're going to be looking at as I call you every single week is we're going to talk about the number of showings we've had. We're going to talk about the number of offers we've gotten. And then we're going to talk about what that means in terms of your price. Okay? So we're gonna talk about, every week, we're gonna be talking about the number of showings you've had, the number of offers, the number of, and what we should do with the price based on that. And what we wanna be looking at is every 3 weeks. Now, for a while, for the last 2 years, I would have been saying, we wanna be evaluating this every 2 days. Like, if we haven't had showings and offers in 2 days, we got a problem. But now I would say we want to look at this every 3 weeks. So every 3 weeks, we're going to be evaluating the number of showings you've had, the number of offers you've gotten, and what that means to the price. Go ahead.
Why did you pick 3 weeks?
So basically, yeah, great question.
I'm just
gonna show
asking.
you. No, you're good.
Okay.
Basically, what happens is this: NAR created this graph, and this has been around as long as I've been around. But basically, what it shows is the value of a house looks something like this. Is when you put it on the market, is you're going to get the top value of the home during the first 3 weeks.
Okay,
If a home has been on the market longer than 3 weeks, it goes down in value.
got it.
Okay, and so let me give you an example. Go ahead.
So there was a stat we just saw in Arizona that said 70% of the homes right now nationally have sold in less than 30 days.
Yeah.
So in the first 30 days, if the home hasn't sold, there's a good chance you're going to be hitting that average days on market, which is extended out to about 45 days right now.
Yep. Yeah, and so let me give you an actual real world one for me where this exactly happened. We were in a market very similar to where we are now. And in fact, it probably couldn't get more perfectly timed for me to tell the story for where the market is right now. The home that I grew up in, my next door neighbor, my parents had the home built, I guess, the house we were in. The next door neighbors did theirs like exact same time. Both my parents and the neighbors raised all of their kids, and a lot of us matched up in age with, they had 6 kids. My mom had 5, my mom and dad had 5, and matched in age pretty close. We all lived, like, until I left the house, we were there, they were there. They ended up moving first, and no, actually my mom moved first, then their parents moved. Well, their parents moved. Both of them ended up dying. The daughter that was my age, that I went to school with, every grade, everything, calls me up. Hey, Russ, Dad passed away. We need to sell this house. Can you come and help us? Yep. So I go out there, and the market had been like we've been in, where it was running up, and then all of a sudden the valve got shut off, and it was starting to, although I would say back then the prices were falling. And we're adjusting prices now, I would say, but then they were falling. Okay. So I go and I meet with her, and of course her dad had done an appraisal right before he passed away, and the home then was worth 417, I think, something like that. 417,000 is what the appraisal came in for. And I kind of said to her, well, you know, you can't always trust an appraisal, and if he was doing it for a refinance or whatever, you know, back then you told the appraiser what you wanted it to appraise for, and the home appraised for that. Like part of after 2008 is where appraisers then got their hands slapped of like, no, you got to actually do what a value is. So I go out and kind of tell them that, and based on the comparables I had looked at, I told them I thought the house would sell for probably $385,000. Well, being a typical seller, she said, well, we want to list it at $400,000. So imagine if this is 385, they wanted to be up here at 400. And I said, okay, we can do that, but we're going to follow this pricing strategy. And here's what the pricing strategy looks like. If after 3 weeks we've had no showings, no offers, that means your price is at least 7 to 10% too high. We need to reduce it by 7 to 10%. Okay? So she says, okay, fine. We put it on the market at 400,000. 3 weeks go by. We've had no showings. We've had no offers. So I go meet with her. And I'll tell you what I do is when I go meet with them, I go on the MLS and find any of the other homes that have gone under contract or that have closed since I listed their house that are similar. So I go find homes that are similar areas, similar style, all that kind of stuff, that either went under contract or have closed since that 3-week period to show here's what's happened with those prices. I go out and I meet with her, I show her that. And at this time, she says, all right, well, let's move the price to 385. Well, the problem is these comparables that I brought in told me now that the price of it probably ought to be, and I might not be exactly right on these numbers, but it was something like this. I said, we need to be at 370. And she said, okay, well, let's lower it to 385. And I said, okay, we lowered it to 385. And after that, we got some showings. And I define some showings as 1 to 3 a week, but no offers. If that happens, you need to reduce the price between 5 and 7%. So 3 weeks go by, we've had some showings, but no offers. So I show up out there and I say, okay, looks to me now that what's happening is the prices are decreasing about as fast as they have been, were increasing in the year before. And I said, so if you want to get it sold now, we probably need to be at 365. And she says, no, I lied. No, this was the 365 actually. So I said to her, 350, that is what it was. I said, we need to be at 350. And she goes, all right, well, let's reduce it to 365. And I said, what you're doing is, notice this, we're chasing the market down. You keep pricing it just above where it is when it's falling. And so I had to say to her, her name is Leslie. I said, Leslie, if we do that and we price it at 365, I'm going to come back to you next month or 3 weeks later. I'm going to come back to you and tell you now the price is 335. Like, we're just going to keep chasing it. We got to get ahead of the curve. And she got it then, because I was showing her the houses. Look, every house that's gone under contract, it's lower and lower price. If we don't get ahead of this, we're going to be to 335. You've already missed out. We could have gotten it sold probably at 385. So she was like, I get it. We priced it at 350. Within 2 days, we get an offer for 342.5. So I go present it to her and she goes, well, you told me if we wait 3 weeks, we're going to be 335. Let's just accept it at 342.5. And I go, well, hold on. Let's not do that. Let's counter back, because my guess is they're thinking 345 or 345. Let's counter back at 347.5. She said, okay. So I countered back 347.5. They accepted our counter. She was ecstatic because she was now expecting 335. So to answer, I don't remember who asked the question or what the question was, but whatever it was, did I answer your question?
Why 3 weeks?
I would think it was Ed. Yeah, why
3
3
weeks,
weeks?
yes.
This is why. The reason for that is because about every 3 weeks, you're going to have to be making adjustments in the market. And this is what it looks like. So here's the thing for me. I don't care what price they want to list at. I'll list it at any price they want now, as long as they understand this and will follow it. If they understand this and will follow it. So let me give you another quick story on this. I told you guys the story about yesterday, I think it was, about the cabin and it was on Monday afternoon.
Yeah.
I told you about the cabin and the lady burning the bread. So on that cabin that I listed, that was the craziest transaction I think I've ever done. Is what the background of it is, that cabin was 60 years old. The parents of that lady that burnt the bread are the ones who built that cabin, and then they left it in their will basically to the son and the daughter. So they're joint tenants on this property. And the son and the daughter both just kind of would use the property for their family and whatever. Well, over the years, the son, who you have to kind of follow it, is my wife's sister's husband's parents. Okay. So this is my wife's sister's husband's parents' cabin. They kind of quit using it. They would use it maybe twice a year. They would go up and spend a week up there or whatever. Well, the sister worked in Salt Lake, but she would weekend up there every weekend. So she would go down and be to work, and then Friday
actually, I think she even had Fridays off. Fridays, she would go up to the cabin, stay there Saturday, Sunday. Monday morning, she would get ready for work and drive down the canyon and go to work. So she gets this idea that she deserves more of the money from the cabin than he should have. And she actually worked for a title company. Okay. So she knew a little bit about the industry. So she goes to her brother. This is a year before I help him sell it. She goes to her brother at a family party one day and says, hey, because her husband had passed away or something. And she's like, I'm changing my name. So I need you to sign this quit claim deed
Oh, boy.
because I'm changing my name on the title to the cabin. He doesn't ask any questions, signs. Well, what she really had him sign was a quit claim deed going from joint tenancy to tenants in common, with her being 2/3 owner and him 1/3.
Wow.
So then a year later, she goes to him and says, hey, you never used the cabin. How would you feel about selling the cabin? And he goes, yeah, if you want to, that's fine. She's like, yeah, I'm going to retire and I just want to live up in the canyon, but I don't want to stay in the cabin. I want to buy something else. So I want to sell it. He's okay. She goes, oh, and FYI, I'm 2/3 owner and you're only 1/3 owner. And he was like, that's not right. Mom and dad left it to both of us.
Mhm.
And so we should split it. And she's like, sorry, like you never used it. I just figured we should change the title to be that. So when you signed that last time, you were actually signing over your interest or part of your interest in the property.
Yeah.
So he goes and gets an attorney. She gets an attorney, which her attorney happens to be the one that owns the title company. And, yeah. So she wants to list the cabin with somebody else. Somebody who's typing notes. Is that you, Brandon?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I just saw a note pop up on there. I was like, are they asking a question? And then I thought I saw it was your picture. So he's saying hi to Heather. Hi, Heather. Everybody say hi to Heather.
Right.
Oh, and so anyway, first thing is I want to make sure I tell you, she wanted to list the cabin with somebody she knew that supposedly sold a bunch of houses up in the canyon. My wife's sister's husband's parents want to use me to help get it sold because I had helped them sell a property before. So what happens is they both agreed that they'll meet with the other person's agent. Okay. Now, I met with her. I had her come to my office. When she came to the office, I sat down and followed this exactly the way I just trained it to you guys. I followed it exactly the way that I trained it to you guys. At the end of the presentation, when I got to the ranking here, when I said, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we at? She says this to me. I have sold my house that's down in the valley, in Salt Lake Valley. And she said, if I would have met with you first, I would have listed it with you. Now, so remember, this is going from a lady who was like adamant that her brother list with her agent. And at the end of this, she's saying, I wish I would have listed my house with you. And I just said, well, it's all right. We can at least get the cabin sold. She leaves though, goes back and talks to her attorney. Her attorney convinces her, no, you need to use this other agent, which I think was one of his agents that used his title company and stuff. So anyway, finally, we come to an agreement that they're going to list it with me. They're going to give me 3 months to get the property sold. And I said, okay, and I had gone through this with her. I said, remember, we got to follow this pricing strategy because she wanted to overprice the property so that it wouldn't sell. So I actually on that one, so don't be afraid to do this. I went as far on that cabin of saying, I put this in an addendum to the listing agreement that says, every 3 weeks, we're going to evaluate the number of showings. And if we've had no showings, no offers, we'll reduce the price 7%. If we've had some showings, and I put in parentheses 1 to 3 a week, but no offers, we'll reduce it 5%. Send it over. Her attorney evaluates it, looks at it, whatever. I got to remember, I got to be nice about attorneys because Brandon went to law school. So.
You got Ed too.
What?
And Ed.
Talk as bad about attorneys as you want.
I know. But you still, I got to always remember, Brandon went to law school. So I'm just kidding. So he gets it and he calls me up and he says, we are not going to sign this. And I said, why? And he said, because the way you've got this written, if there's no showings, no offers, we reduce it 7% or 5%. we could be reducing it, and pretty soon, like, it's just free. And I was like, you're an idiot. I didn't say that. I did not say that, but I thought it, because I'm like, okay, there's gonna come a point before free that I'm gonna buy it. Like, at some point, I'll tell you, hey, at this price, I'll buy it. But that's not gonna happen. Like, I understand, the way the market works is once you get within 4% of where it should be, it's gonna get an offer. So I was like, that's never gonna happen. But here's how you handle it in those scenarios. I said, well, what would you propose then? How would you propose that we do it? And he said, we'll agree that if it isn't sold by the first 3-week period, so he said, we'll put in the contract, if it's not sold by this date, the price will reduce to this. So I had just put a percentage. He actually said, on this date, the price will go to this. On this date, the price will go to this. On this date, it'll go to this. And then if it's not sold, we can get together and talk about it. Well, his bottom number, I was like, it's selling before it gets to that. So I'd go, great. What that did is created the scenario. The way I structured it to begin with, I was gonna have to go back and have him sign a price change or an addendum, changing the price. I don't even have to do that now. He already built it into the contract. I was like, this is perfect. So we list the property, too high of price, we list it. Within a week, we get an offer, full price. And she's like, I told you it was worth that price. And I was like, well, good for you. It's awesome. Within a few days, they go do their inspection. This cabin has no insulation.
Oh, wow.
Like, it was a great cabin in the summer. The winter, not so good because it's cinder block, basically. There's no insulation, cinder block.
Wow.
It's cold. And the people come in and go, hey, if we're going to buy this cabin, you got to reduce the price way lower.
Yeah.
And she was like, we're not going to do that. So, and it was more than 2 days. I think it was within a week or two, something like that they did their inspection. But, so now we have it on the market. That date's coming up. It's the day before the date. We get to reduce the price to where I thought it should be to begin with. She calls me. Hey, because we got that offer so fast, could we give it another week before we drop the price? I go, yeah, that's fine. I'm good with that. We'll wait one more week. Week goes by. We haven't gotten anything. We then drop the price. And I didn't even ask because I already had permission per the contract to change it. I just went and changed the price because of what the contract said. Soon as we changed the price, we got an offer. It sold for, it actually ended up selling for higher than I thought what I told her the price was going to be. Not a lot, $4,000 or $5,000, but we got it sold. So my point with that is really talk this pricing strategy with people when you're meeting with them. Make sure they understand it and just say, look, this is what's going on in the market. Because of that, this is how we're going to handle it. Then C on this is then I'm going to do the CMA to land on what's the price? Oops, I put an extra thing on CMA. Then I'm gonna land on, okay, what should we price your property at? Right there, okay? Then after that, once we've come to an agreement on that, then number 8. Number 8 is close. So the next thing I'm gonna do is, because remember back here, up here, I already asked on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we at? They were good. Or they said, in Frank's case, whatever, they said, let's talk about the price. Craig, we've come to an agreement on the price. So now the only question is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, do you want it to hit the market tomorrow or would you prefer Saturday? And then they go, I don't know, which is better? Well, I would say tomorrow, because whatever it is. But then I'm gonna have them sign the paperwork.
What about commission? We've
What-
already worked through that.
Well, yeah, so good question. See, at this point though, if they haven't brought anything up, then I'm
Just sign
gonna
it.
now go
Okay.
go through the paperwork with them,
Okay.
and that's probably where it's.
And then it's what they'll see it in the, okay,
Yep.
awesome,
It's more a challenge.
Yep.
okay.
Take it,
Take it or leave.
and don't.
Yeah, take it, don't leave it.
Because we're making the assumption by this point, they're just gonna be like, I love you.
Yeah, that's
You are God's.
what I'm
Right.
hoping is that I've done enough of this
Right.
that they're like,
Right.
no, we
Awesome.
get it.
I trust you.
Yep.
To get it sold
Now,
out.
here's the thing. In the event though, so now let me help you on the commission part. In the event though that we get to the commission, they look at it and they see 7%. And so you be the person asking me about it.
Like 7%.
With a smile.
I don't know about that. I know that people only charge 5.
I know, and they should. They really probably should only charge 4. mean, really, just for what they do, like they shouldn't, that they're ripping you off at 5.
Oh, okay.
So,
Like
you're good
legitimately,
with that?
you just make me uncomfortable. No, I'm being serious, like legitimately, you just made me uncomfortable,
I
so
know.
I'd be like, okay.
So you can't, I usually will do that, but I do it, and then I will just be like, I'm kidding, sort of.
Yeah,
Like,
right, yeah,
but honestly, most agents, they really should. So here's why. The reason I recommend it, and here's the good thing. And this is the key question. As long as you walk away with more money, does it really matter what you paid me? And you're gonna agree to any offer before we accept it. So if it's not an acceptable amount, just don't accept the offer. But I really truly believe I'm gonna get you more money with you paying that commission. So it doesn't really matter what you're paying me as long as you're happy with what you're walking away,
Okay,
right? I mean, is that right?
no, absolutely.
Okay, and then here's the other side of it. The reason why I'm gonna do that, if they still had questions, I'm gonna say, here's the reason why. We actually have to get your property sold 3 times to get it closed once. And what that means is this. Here's what that means. The first thing we gotta do is we gotta get agents to want to show your property. And the way that we do that is through what we're gonna offer in terms of a buyer agent commission. And so most agents are out there offering in terms of a commission 2 or 2.5. We need your property to stand out. The way we're gonna do that is we're gonna offer 3.5%. Because if we offer 3.5%, who in here is gonna be excited
Right.
about showing that property? You're gonna be excited about it. So I wanna get as every agent in the market excited about your house. Here's the other reason we do that. The other reason you want to offer a higher commission to the buyer's agent is, and you guys tell me the truth, like I totally get our fiduciary duties and all that kind of stuff that we have to our clients, and I get the code of ethics and you can't put your interests above others. I totally get that. But I also know human nature. And I know if you bring me a buyer to my listing, that you're gonna get paid 3.5% off of that commission. Guess what she's gonna do when her buyer wants to write a lowball offer? What is she gonna do? Maybe not her, but
Right.
what are most agents gonna do?
Don't judge me.
Or get it accepted, so they're gonna bring it up.
They're gonna try to convince their client to do a better offer because they wanna make sure that gets accepted. But even if they don't, let's just hypothetically say that they write the offer, whatever, we negotiate, we come to terms. Now her buyer goes and does an inspection. If there's some things in the inspection and the buyer's like, hey, I think we wanna cancel, what's she gonna do?
Try to work it out.
She's gonna be like, well, let's see if we can get this worked out somehow. Let me call and talk. Like all of a sudden, and this is what I'm telling the seller, all of the sudden, that agent becomes your advocate on keeping the deal put together. Because what they know, if that deal falls apart, Nicole, you're gonna go sell them a different house for the same price and you're gonna get 1% less. Or at least, well, maybe even 1.5% less if it's a 2% and I'm offering 3.5. So
I'm gonna work harder to try to close the deal.
the buyer's agents are gonna work harder to close the deal for you as the seller if we offer them a little bit more money. Meaning, if we're talking 1%, like we're talking, and we're really talking 2%, because I'm gonna keep 1% too. But if what I'm saying is here is like that agent is gonna more than likely, even the offer you're gonna get is gonna be probably 2% higher just because they want to get the deal to happen. When it's time to negotiate inspections, they're gonna be less likely to come in and try to strong arm you to do stuff to make repairs. So now I'm gonna save you money on repairs too. See, if you can get the seller to understand that's how it works, we wanna make sure the agents don't want the deal to fall apart. If they're getting less than, let's reverse it. I'm offering 1.5 or 2%. Are you gonna care if the deal falls apart? I'm just telling you from my own perspective. I have had scenarios where the seller says to me, hey, we don't like this, we wanna cancel it. And I'm like, sweet. Cause probably I'm gonna, we're only getting 2.5 here and everybody else is offering 3. Good, let's go. I'm gonna make another 0.5% versus the other way around. you're like, well, let me call the agent, see what we can work out. Let me see if we can, like, all of a sudden they're negotiating on your behalf. So that's the first people we want to get on board. The second people we got to get on board with your property is the buyers. But the agents are going to help get the buyers on board. They're going to point out every good thing about your house versus if we're offering the same or less than other people, they don't want to show it. And then the third person we got to get to buy in is the appraiser. And so we got to make sure we price it according to where an appraiser is going to agree. So we got to get the agents to buy off on your price. We got to get the buyers to buy off on your price, and we got to get the appraiser in order to just get your home sold. So that's the reason we need to charge the commission. And like I said, if you don't like the offer and it's not going to net you what you want, don't take it. But I believe I can make up the difference. And part of that is I sometimes will go back to this story here of if you'll just follow what I tell you to do, you'll end up with more money. And so, for example, on this one with my the neighbor, her parents' house, she would have accepted 342.5, and I said, let's counter back at 347.5. At that, look at the difference. Like that almost covered my whole commission, just that $5,000.
Right, yeah.
So it's like, that's why it's worth it. And I'll just tell people, if I can't, so let's just say it's a $500,000 home. If I can't negotiate you an extra $10,000, you shouldn't be paying me a commission at all. Like, so the other agents that'll do it for less, like I was joking when I said they should do it for less, but I'm really not joking because they're going to just try to just take whatever they can get so they can get paid. I'm going to get you the best deal we can get. So would you prefer to do 8% instead of 7% and offer 4% to whoever brings in the buyer? All right. Okay, good. 7%. You guys are 7%. That's what 7%.
7%?
We list for 7%.
You
This
better
one.
gonna try.
Good.
I'm gonna listen to my 2 weeks.
Do you? Approach
So
it
I'm gonna
that
be
way.
calling you for like the next.
Do it. Call me. But I'm telling you, do that and let's get you this listing at 7%. And then you'll offer 3.5 and you watch how many agents.
Especially because it's not in like a highly desirable area.
Okay, and so that's the other thing to point out to the seller is don't say it in a bad way, but be like, hey, like in this area, we gotta really get the agents to want to be
Drive
showing
out
it
here.
and the buyers, yeah, to come out here.
Yeah.
So maybe do go for 8.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, at the end of the day, does it matter what I'm charging you if you
If
get,
you're netting
if
what
you're
you want.
netting what you need? And because I can get it for you. So let's do it.
We're gonna call you.
Okay, I'm excited. All right, what other questions?
We're gonna fly to.
Oh, we're
Utah
12:05.
for a little bit.
Yeah, do it, come out.
You
Not the winter.
Yeah, I was
have
gonna
spare
say,
bed,
just-
you have spare bedrooms.
I
so
do
it's
have
fine.
spare bed, I've got 3 actually spare bedrooms.
Do you like toddlers? No, I'm just kidding.
I don't even like my 14-year-old right now. I told you guys that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I really do, but I so yeah, I gotta tell you guys the story. Remember, I told you about leaving on Sunday.
Yeah.
So last night, my wife